Let me fix this real quick. Well, again, thank you. My name is Tom Sabol, and I'm board president of the Citywide Development Corporation. On behalf of the entire corporation, we'd like to welcome you to the 2024 Downtown Newcastle Development Conference. We'd also like to thank our sponsor, the Lawrence County Board of Realtors, and I would also like to thank, in particular, Kim Craigle and our executive director, Brian, for working through and getting this grant to have this conference. Let's do this as easy. The Newcastle CDC, as we call it, is the nonprofit community and economic organization in the city of Newcastle. Our goal is to create, foster, and promote economic development within the city, and our current focus is on the downtown. We also want to be the point person for all the existing businesses and new businesses in this area. As a greater region for the city and the county, we have to have a strong core, and that core is the downtown. If you look at other regions like Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh's flourishing in a lot of other neighborhoods around the downtown, but there's a concerted effort because they realize they have to make the downtown strong. It's essential. When you think of your body, if you have a weak core, it can cause other places to be sore or not function properly, and we need to invest and make the core stronger. I've been involved with the board for about 3 years, and the kind of steps that have been taking place over those 3 years, and it's not due to me by any means, it's the collective board members that we have. We have a very strong board who has various backgrounds that contribute from various experiences. And that was the step one of really getting organized with our own board. Step two was getting a really good executive director, Brian Burick, who's led the efforts for the last year in pushing projects forward and momentum for the downtown. The next step that we really want to focus on is, what we have been focusing on is beautification projects. Brian's going to talk more about some of these projects, but as some have been involved with the facade project, beautification of parks, and kind of making the area more desirable, livable, and actually more beautiful. And the next step that we really want to focus on this, as we kind of push to the end of this year, is marketing and promotion. There's a lot of good things happening around downtown, and it's all due to a lot of folks in this room here. We want to make sure that we're getting those messages out, not only what the CDC is doing, but what other businesses are doing, and anything else in the surrounding area. And then, our next step we want to focus on is actually taking a real estate development project where the CDC can invest with the city and make a concerted effort to take the lead on a project that's also going to promote economic growth and vitality. So, again, I know it's a Saturday morning, and appreciate everyone for coming out. Looking forward to hearing more from other speakers, but just want to thank everyone and hope it's a good event.
Next, I'd like to welcome to the mic the mayor of the city of Newcastle, Mark Elisco.
Thank you, Brian. It's wonderful to be here this morning with all the movers and shakers of this community. With this group here, I think we're on the cusp of a renaissance in this downtown. This is the beginning of a renaissance. And I'm going to make a prediction here, because as we all know here, as being movers and shakers, we all know that you make a plan and you work a plan. And that's exactly what we're doing. And I can tell you this, in 18 to 20 months, if you were to transport yourself into the future and plop yourself downtown, you won't recognize this downtown. That's how confident I am of what's going to happen. So thank you all for being here. Brian?
Next, I'd like to welcome the Lawrence County Board of Commissioners Chairman, Mr. Dan Vogler.
Thank you, everyone. Brian, thank you very much. Appreciate your having us today. And this is a great crowd, just to echo the previous two speakers. I'm here today on behalf of my two colleagues, Commissioner Chris Sonata and Commissioner Dan Kennedy. Commissioner Kennedy had a prior commitment, but his wife is here today, Debbie Kennedy. Many of you know Debbie, and she's on the staff of State Representative Marla Brown. So on behalf of my two fellow commissioners, I want to welcome everyone, particularly folks who might not be from Lawrence County. And I know there are one or two folks in the room who aren't from Lawrence County. So we wish you a very warm welcome. I'm excited about what is happening in Newcastle. If you pick up today's paper, just today's edition, there are at least 2 articles that talk about some positive events that are going on and some things that are happening right here in downtown Newcastle. I'm pleased, I know it's an inconvenience, but I'm pleased to see the investment that PennDOT is making on the replacement of the East Washington Street Bridge, or as us old-timers call it, the Troutman's Bridge. Those of you who chuckled are probably my age. I think PennDOT gets criticized a lot, but I think they deserve a little bit of credit, because in the last couple of years you've seen the resurfacing of State Route 65, the East Washington Street corridor going out through the east side, and what they're doing right now on State Route 18, that resurfacing. So they've invested a good deal of funds into the city. The county, we own 2 of the downtown bridges. We own the North Street Bridge and the Mill Street Bridge, and both of those bridges have been either replaced or rehabilitated within the last 10 or 15 years. And so to conclude, on behalf of my 2 fellow commissioners, we've enjoyed what I think is a good, positive working relationship with City Council and the leaders here in the city. And because, of course, the 3 of us work here every day. And our commitment is to continue that strong working relationship. I'm excited about the current composition of this City Council. I think the voters have done a good job with whom they've elected, and the council itself, with the last 2 appointments they've made with Mr. Vogler and Mr. Esposito, they've made tremendous appointments. So I think the future is bright, and I look forward to working with all of you again on behalf of my 2 colleagues. Thank you.
This next person's not on the agenda, but I want to give him a minute to say hello. One of the great anchor institutions in downtown Newcastle for many years is the Newcastle Public Library. Some of you may know it's not only our public library for the city, it's also the head of the regional library system serving 4 counties, and it's the core of the Lawrence County Federated Library System. So to say hello and introduce Andrew Henley, the director of the Newcastle Public Library.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everyone. As he said, my name is Andrew Henley. We serve actually as a regional location, serving Mercer County, Lawrence County, Butler County, and Armstrong County. 400,000 residents. We provide access to our digital titles and our collective services. And I wanted to say that, you know, we overlook statistics, but I have to report them because I have to report them to the state all the time. On a slow month at the library, we have 1,000 people walking through our doors. On a busy month at the library, we have 4,000 to 6,000 people walking through our doors. That foot traffic alone really is a characteristic of how many people are coming to our downtown. We are seeing over 1,000 individuals every month participate with our children's programming. These are families coming down to our downtown. And unfortunately, the only location many of the times is to eat at 2 locations, which I'm so grateful for. Hazel's, I get breakfast there all the time. But then we also have Dunkin' Donuts. And when we look at this, we have a foot traffic. We have the people coming here. And then after they're already at the library, we need to look at what the next steps are. How can we cross-sell? How could we create an environment that allows them to stay in our downtown? I'll say this, is that I believe that we are on the cusp of the next era. We are seeing individuals actively participating in our community. We are seeing individuals that are reinvesting in the community. Over the last year, the library raised $561,000. That, in my opinion, is a testament that people want to invest in our downtown, they want to invest in our educational systems, and they want to invest in our community. We, I think, we have great leadership, as Commissioner Vogler had said, and I will say, as Brian's been our largest proponent at the library, and I think as a former staffer of a state representative, as a former commissioner, I think that the CDC is in great hands to move it forward. He understands the connections, he understands the movements, He understands how we can move forward through this entire process. So I wish you a wonderful conference. Unfortunately, I have a funeral I have to make over in Akron, but I wish you, I'm awesome to see these many people. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. That reminds me, if you do go in the library, there's a big plaque right inside the side entrance on the wall in recognizing State Representative Tom Fee. And as he said, my first full-time job out of college, I worked downtown Newcastle, if you know where the Cricket Wireless store is now. That was State Representative Tom Fee's office, district office for many years. And Tom, you remember the old days, it was called WAM money, walking around money. Tom Fee dedicated all of his legislative initiative money to the Newcastle Public Library. He had a large family, a lot of kids and grandchildren, and he believed that was the best use of that money to support our local library system. So Tom's name's inside there. And then I was fortunate as commissioner with Tom Fee. After he retired from the legislature, he and I were both elected as Lawrence County commissioners, and we instituted the Lawrence County Federated Library System and implemented you do pay a very small tax on your county property tax. A small portion of that goes to fund the library system, but that leveraged additional state dollars, and it's great to see additional private investment in support of the library this past year. But the library is still critical. Like he said, draws a lot of people downtown. I was just talking to friends this week, and they said they can't wait for the library to reopen after the recent incident, and their child looks forward to the programming for children every week at the library. So it's great to see the second floor back open. Thanks, Andrew. At this time, I want to have someone come up. I was very blessed this year. On my board of directors is Kim Craigle. She's the current president of the Lawrence County Board of Realtors. And through Kim, she introduced me to Justin Capouellez. Justin is the regional representative for the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. And at our very first meeting, he said, "What can we do to help you?" He said, "There's some funding through the National Association of Realtors grant program. Would you be interested?" Well, a big part of my job is getting grant funds into Newcastle, so I said absolutely. And with Justin and Kim's assistance, we were able to apply for and get approved for 3 grants for the city of Newcastle. And one of them covers the cost of the event today, and we're glad to support the Confluence. But at this time, I want Justin Capouellez from the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Brian, and for all the hard work that you've been doing this year. It's hard to believe that you haven't even been in your position for a year.
9 months.
It feels like it's been like 3 years worth of work. But I could say that I cover 5 counties, and I just haven't seen someone that has the passion and drive and love of Newcastle that Brian has. And with people looking to do development projects in Newcastle, Brian's going to be a strong partner and do everything he can to help you succeed. He'll even work on weekends. He'll work late at night. I know because I've talked to him to get things done in a time-sensitive manner, but Brian's the guy. And so the reason why we're here today and why we're taking an effort to sponsor events like this is our members do so much more than make it possible to buy your first home or start your own business. We care about the community, and we want to make a difference. And through our position in the community, we have a lot of relationships. And we're able to bring people together and make things happen that ordinarily may not happen without us taking a step forward and with our leadership. And so if I could just acknowledge some of our members that are in the crowd today, just by a show of hands of our members. Now, they're the ones that approve the grants. I could write them, but they have to approve them. So thank you to all our members and our board members. But let's keep on the same let's keep on the same wavelength as participation. If you're from Lawrence County, can you raise your hand? Okay. Allegheny County? Butler? Beaver? Ohio? OH. Did I miss anyone? Mercer. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for making the trip out here. If you're a developer. Okay, great. So yeah, we have a nice diverse group of people here. from all over Western Pennsylvania. So we're glad you're here. We're excited for what's going to take place later this morning. You're going to hear stories of local developers who had a vision for Newcastle and they turned that vision into a reality. And so we're excited to get those stories out there. We're excited you're here. And Brian said, and if you're looking for the guru, Tom McCosby back there, who is the state president of the Pennsylvania Home Builders Association until the end of the year, but he is the most knowledgeable person on building that I've met. So if you're interested in projects or you need to get good information, make sure to talk to Tom. And thank you, Brian.
All right. Thank you again. And most of you met Kim. When you come to Kim, wave your hand one more time. That's Kim Craigle, Lawrence County Board of Realtors. They are our sponsor of this event today, and we thank you. We thank all the members of the Realtors Board for being here today. At this time, I'm going to do my brief presentation, then introduce the smart guy in the room. We do have a very special keynote speaker came in from Harrisburg today, but I'm going to give you a short presentation. And Bill's going to mention, Bill Arrowood from Pennsylvania Downtown Center will be speaking here briefly. You all know the history. Over time, cities lost a lot of people to the suburbs, and then over time, Western Pennsylvania lost a lot of people that moved away to other areas of the country. And downtown, our population shrunk, and we lost industry, and downtowns struggled and declined. And we ended up with a situation where we had a lot of empty buildings. We pretty much stabilized for a few years, and we actually had hundreds and hundreds of people working in downtown Newcastle until COVID hit in 2020. Just in 2020, we lost over 400 jobs, went from people coming downtown every day to their offices to work from home jobs. And that really hurt the foot traffic downtown. And as you come through downtown, many parts you see empty buildings. Unfortunately, we were in a situation we had blighted buildings. But I think we've turned the corner. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of the good news that's been happening over the past year. Recent developments. The City of Newcastle has partnered with the Lawrence County Redevelopment Authority to eliminate blight. Many blighted properties. 3 large properties, I'll show you in a second, downtown have been torn down this year, which is a positive step. Because when you see an empty building, it draws vagrants, it draws graffiti, it creates a public safety hazard. And we're excited that we finally got some buildings down that needed to come down. When this conference is over, anybody that's available, I'd like you to take a 10-minute walk with me right down East Washington Street. We're very excited about turning a vacant lot where a building was torn down 5 years ago. We had a very ugly vacant lot on East Washington Street down at Apple Alley. And under construction now, and it'll be done in a few weeks, is a beautiful little pocket park, which is going to be a nice improvement for the community. I'm going to talk about the facade improvements. Just on East Washington Street, between the courthouse and Kennedy Square, we've had multiple buildings in the past year and a half bought and renovated or repaired. The Wright Building, I know Linda Nitch from Dawn's going to talk about that. The Strip Matter Building, we're glad Anthony Januso. Anthony, where are you? Anthony Januso, Realty One. They bought that building, started to make repairs to it. I look forward to an update from him soon on that building. Down the next block, the Vitale Building, they partnered with the CDC and the City of Newcastle. They invested a lot of money in their building. Bespoke, the next block down, is we have a brand new facade on the Bespoke laser engraving business. The Kirk Hutton Building, Tim Fulkerson is probably going to mention that. It's one of the buildings he has bought and is renovating in downtown Newcastle. And then the Huntington Bank Building. We're very excited about this. The Lee family bought the old Huntington Bank Building. I'm going to show you the restaurant that just opened this week. And then one block north of here, we have the old library building. It was bought recently by the Human Services Center, which is one of the largest nonprofits in our community. And they've renovated that into office space, and they have about 40 employees working in that building downtown. So as you can see, there's many positive developments happening in the last 18 months in Newcastle. Here's a map. If you look, we're sitting at the confluence near the bottom right corner. Right next to us is the City of Newcastle's beautiful Riverwalk Park. Across the street is Washington Center. And you see just to the left of that, it says Future Green Space. I'll show you the former First Merit Plaza building that has been demolished, and they're just in the final stages now of filling in the hole that was the basement. But that's going to be green space for the foreseeable future and at opportunity for new development on that property. We have a brand new project coming called Preeminence. I'm going to show you a slide on that. East Washington Street Pocket Park is next to the Vitale building. And then Tim Fulkerson's property, his nephew Eric Fulkerson runs the Neshannock Creek Brewery, which opened last year. And Le Resto is the new Asian restaurant that just opened. And we had an out-of-town investor bought the old Penn Power building on Kennedy Square. It's now ServaxNet. Is a data center in the upstairs, and the first floor is now the Diamond Banquet and Event Center. So you can see just in a few block area, there's a lot of positive developments just in the last 18 months. Blight removal. First thing is get rid of some buildings that were abandoned and vacant and became an eyesore. This is the former Lockley Manufacturing Building right around the corner at 310 Grove Street. That building has been demolished and construction is now underway of a new self-storage facility, which is going to improve the look of that corridor coming in. That's down the Taylor Street Hill. When you come into Newcastle and Business Route 422 into the downtown, you pass this property. It's going to be a brand new building there. On the left is the former First Merrick Plaza, which is one block north of us on Mill Street. That building is now down, and like I said, the basement's being filled in, and in a few weeks that'll be complete. And on the right, you'll see the former Universal Rundle office building. For the past 2 years, I live on the North Hill, Newcastle. I drive into downtown every day and look and see the pile of bricks that kept falling off the building. So unfortunately, when you have buildings sit empty for too long, you know, nature takes its course and that building is falling down. So that building is now down and that is now green space coming into downtown. Here's some artist renderings of what the Pocket Park, similar to what the Pocket Park down the street is going to look like. And again, if you can join me for 10 or 15 minutes after this event's over, please take a walk with me down the street. New businesses downtown. Just last year at this time, we had 2 new businesses open. We're glad to have Rod Fermi and Dave Goldberg. Where's Dave and Rod? Put up your hands. These 2 gentlemen worked with, rented a building from Dawn Services on East Washington Street on the right there and invested a lot of time and money and opened the Union Station Craft Distillery. Excellent facility, and they're also making their products available at the different events and the different partnering with other businesses in downtown Newcastle. We're so happy and grateful for their investment in the downtown. Neshannock Creek Brewery, first floor of the former Zambelli building, the old Z Penn Hotel that Mr. Fulkerson, who's going to speak in a little bit, his nephew opened that brewery. I had a beer from there last night because they're now serving alcohol at the new Asian restaurant, partnering together. Had a great beer from there last night. Here's the thing that many people don't know about, and I'm so happy that we have Tim Fulkerson and Ash Allgyer with us today. As you know, many cities around the country, New York, Pittsburgh, everywhere, we have a lot of vacant commercial office space. After COVID and the movement to work from home, what do you do with all this vacant space in the downtowns? Well, one idea that's being implemented some places, and I'm very happy it's happening here in Newcastle, is converting former office space into housing. Just in the last year, we have 22 new market rate apartments, and there are 45 more planned. Ash Allgyer is going to talk in a little bit. He plans to add 7 more apartments in his Temple building over on North Street. And at the bottom, you'll see 1 block southwest of us here is another dilapidated building, the old original, if you're from Newcastle, when I was a kid, it was G.C. Murphy, and then later it was the Rite Aid drugstore before they moved to Kennedy Square. But unfortunately, that building's been vacant for a number of years, and at this point, the damage to the interior of the building, if you let a roof go, eventually nature takes its course. That building has been condemned by the city of Newcastle. So at 119 East Washington Street, a developer company called Metro Vitalization bought that property. They just completed the asbestos abatement in the building, and that building will be start the demolition process in the next few weeks. And in the next as soon as the demolition's done, a brand new building has been approved by City Council, conditional use, and the zoning approval to build a new building called Preeminence. It's going to be a 5-story building with 4 retail spots on the first floor and apartments on floors 2 through 5. And we're very excited to see new construction take place in downtown Newcastle. 2 nights ago, Thursday night, some of you in the room were with me. We celebrated the soft opening of Le Resto, a sushi and Asian fusion restaurant. You can see 3 pictures I pulled. This is the lobby of the former, it was 4 different banks over the years, most recently Huntington Bank. But this big, beautiful building the banks have merged and consolidated branches. With the movement to online banking, many banks are downsizing the number of physical locations where they provide. And so we were very happy to have a family from Boston come in and invest in real estate in Newcastle. They've converted the first floor into a restaurant. And in fact, after the conference ends at noon and the short walking tour, I'm going to head to lunch down there, and I'm inviting all of you to come if you'd like, on your own dime, of course. But please, if you'd like to support a new restaurant and check it out. In fact, let me see a show of hands. How many people think they might be able to join me for lunch today? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15. Excellent. Very good. The food was excellent, and I'm looking forward to eating there again. Downtown Facade Program. I want to thank the commissioners and the city council. Last year, the city and the county both threw in $25,000, so we had a pot of $50,000, and we made available a downtown facade improvement grant program. And we had 9 businesses have already taken advantage of that. There's the list there on Jefferson Street, Mercer Street, Washington Street, and we're very happy to have, I have some pictures. Abdu is here from PETA. Here's Bespoke down on 26 East Washington Street. Bespoke Cerakote and laser engraving business fixed up the front of their building. It looks beautiful with the stone on the bottom. Here's PETA, a sandwich stop over at 212 Grove Street. On the left is what the building looked like before. On the right, it's a little hard to see, but he added beautiful outdoor seating and also indoor seating with the garage door type windows that open up. I had lunch there this summer, and I sat there, and the windows were open, and beautiful, beautiful new improvement. Thank you so much for your investment, Abdu, and the city and county provided matching funds for him to make these improvements to his restaurant. So what's the vision of the CDC? My board president, Tom, already mentioned. We want to work with developers to bring more market rate housing to downtown and new home construction in the city. With Tom McCosby and our consultant from Carnegie Mellon, we were able to hire this year through the Realtors Grant, Donald Bonk. We did an affordable housing, workforce housing study. Newcastle has something that a lot of areas don't have. We have the infrastructure. We have the water and the sewer lines and the electric service and the high-speed internet that you can tap into. And there's actually vacant properties we've identified in the city where new housing construction can take place. And last week at the Builders and Realtors Breakfast, we presented information to our legislative delegation on things that the state can do to improve the rules. As you know, right now, to build new construction, it's very costly to comply with all the different requirements. One of the big costs, though, is the NPDES permits when you're putting in new water and sewer lines. But in the city, we're lucky to have the infrastructure. We worked with the utilities and the sanitation authority. You can build new in the city, and you have access to tap into all the utilities that are needed. We're going to develop programming with new green spaces downtown. I have a meeting coming up in the next couple months with the public library, the YMCA, and the Hoyt Center for the Arts. We're going to put some programming into these new green spaces in downtown to get people to come and enjoy this outdoors. We want to support existing and startup businesses and new restaurants downtown. We're working, City Administrator Chris Frye has been working hard, and I'm working with him to secure state and federal grant funding to improve the streets and sidewalks downtown. And we want to encourage and support more businesses and recreational activities downtown. We're blessed here in Newcastle. We have the beautiful Neshannock Creek and the Shenango River run through downtown. Many communities with waterways have added amenities, attractions, restaurants, businesses along the waterways. We want to continue to promote biking and fishing. Last summer, we opened the Riverwalk Bike Trail. How can you help support your downtown? These are common sense things. Buy local, dine out at local restaurants, leave positive reviews, support local charities. When you hire somebody, try to hire small businesses. They're often the backbone of the local economy. Support downtown events. How many of you have been to the summer concert series? This past summer, we had 9 Friday nights where we had bands, free concerts to the community. We had great turnouts. Between 200 and 500 people came down for those events. This summer, I want to thank our city council members that are here, especially Terry Rogers and A. Bogart, David Ward. They worked very hard. They brought back the Newcastle Fireworks Festival in July. We were very excited. We had a great turnout. Thank you, gentlemen. Ashley Lapierre's here. Last year, she was hired to coordinate the holiday parade, and she's doing it again this year, coming up on November 23rd. She put on a fabulous community parade that draws people in from the whole county and outside the county. All the county schools bands participated. I think that was the most people I'd seen downtown in 20 years. That was a fabulous event, and that's coming up again on November 23rd. Light up night and a holiday parade, so thank you, Ashley. Last but not least, the CDC, and Bill's going to talk about it, is going to implement what's called the Main Street model of revitalization. And the CDC is taking the lead on this. Starting next month, we're going to have 4 different committees meet, probably monthly or every other month. And we're looking for additional volunteers to serve on these committees. So if you believe in the future of Newcastle and want to have input into that process, please give me your card before you leave or email me. My email, the easiest way to reach me is the email newcastlecdc@gmail.com. And we look forward to the future here. At this time, I'd like to ask our special keynote speaker, Bill Arrowood, to come on up. I met Bill at the beginning of this year at the Pennsylvania Downtown Center meeting and conference, and I've had the pleasure of talking to him numerous times throughout the year. Bill has worked with communities statewide, and he's going to do a quick presentation, and then he's going to take any questions or comments. First, before we turn to him, does anybody have any questions or comments on anything I showed in my slide presentation?
Thank you guys, thank you so much, thank you Brian. I really appreciate you guys having me here. I resent being called the smart guy in the room because there's a lot more smarter people in here. What I am is fortunately a person who gets to travel a lot and gets to talk to a lot of people and to be a connective tissue between communities. And that doesn't make me smarter, that makes me accessing a lot of smart people that get to connect people when they have ideas. And that's a lot of what the Pennsylvania Downtown Center does. But we're going to talk today a little bit about what we do and what the Department of Community Economic Development does. But I want to start with understanding, and you guys have touched on this a little bit, and I heard some rumblings in the background. I heard the mayor talking earlier about how we got to where we are today, and understanding the circumstances and the way that the world has changed that had led to the need for organizations like the CDC and Main Street to sort of come in and do a revitalization effort. So, how many people remember how many shoe stores there used to be in downtown Newcastle? How many? Like a dozen? Right. How many people remember when there was 15 theaters within a 3-mile radius? That world isn't here anymore. But there was a time when our main streets were the centers of commerce and the centers of civic life. They just were. But what happened to change that? It wasn't all based on just the fact that the shoe stores moved to the mall. There's lots of different factors. Suburban sprawl contributed to that. The shift after the war contributed to that. Segregated land use, economic centers, shopping malls and strip malls weren't a thing 50 or 60 years, well, probably 50 years ago they were, but now, and when we talk about that golden era, they weren't there. How many people have heard of the idea of spot zoning? Do you guys know what that means? Spot zoning is when you take a specific area and you say, we don't want a certain kind of people to operate businesses there, and so we draw a line around. It's also called redlining. It's the idea of a certain era of a lot of civic governments it's literally the definition of what became of the opposite side of the railroad tracks. It separated and segregated a lot of our communities and created a lot of the things that people didn't see would happen until many, many years later. We are still feeling the results of a lot of those things. How many people know what the idea of NIMBY is? Anybody want to tell me what a NIMBY is?
Not in my backyard.
Not in my backyard, that's right. I've got a great business I want to open downtown. It's going to serve a lot of people. We don't want that kind of business here. And so it has created a sense of unwelcomeness. A sense of white flight. White flight is something we talk about a lot more in the urban areas, but the folks that when a diverse group of people starts to move in, all the white folks would move farther and farther out, and then they're strung all the way out. And so that has left vacancy in a lot of places where they still own buildings but aren't operating or living in them anymore. So these are all factors that sort of contributed to the state of things where we are right now. Currently, we have a lot of competing shopping options. We have a lot of aging and crumbling infrastructure. I think Brian was talking about that with a lot of the buildings that you guys are finally finding ways to either reuse or tear down and start over again. We have a lot of high renter to owner occupancy rates. The rent is too damn high is a thing I hear in almost every city I'm in because a lot of the owners are not in the area. We've got situations in places like Oil City where we have owners that are not even in the state. They're just buying up property and letting it crumble amongst itself, and we will be talking about that specific person later on, off to the record, because I've heard he's got his eyes on Newcastle. Loss of neighborhood identity, perceived higher crime rates, I think is an important thing to mention. And we're going to talk a little bit later on about perception and reality, but like when it feels empty downtown, when you don't see a certain number of people downtown, the perception is that it's not safe, whether it is or not. And a big part of what Main Street does is work to change perceptions and make sure people understand what is and what isn't based on what the reality is, not what we heard 10 years ago. When I worked on South Street in Philadelphia, in the early aughts, there was a rash of flash mobs. You guys know what a flash mob is?
Yes.
Okay, good. That happened in 2001 and 2002. In 2019, I was working there and people were still talking about the flash mob that hadn't happened in 20 years. But that was a perception that it was unsafe because something happened 20 years ago. We hadn't actively worked to change the perception back to something positive. And then the rising cost of supply chain costs. And we all know what that is, especially post-pandemic. Brian was talking about the fact that construction has gone up significantly in the last, I think it's jumped more in the last 5 years than it has in the last 15. So here's where we come in. And we work in Triune with two other major agencies. My organization is the Pennsylvania Downtown Center. We'll talk about them in just a little bit. But we also work with the National Main Street Center and the Pennsylvania Department of Community Economic Development. As I often say, there's a lot of alphabet soup in what I do. So these are the three that you're going to hear me reference by letter later on, so I just want to make sure you guys sort of know what these are. We're going to talk a little bit about what each of these organizations does and how we believe we're here to help affect the quality of life of your communities. Who we are specifically, the Pennsylvania Downtown Center is a statewide nonprofit, member-based. We are not a state agency. It's clear, I want to make clear that we are not a state agency. We work independently of the state and work through a contract with them and work with a contract with National Main Street Center. We are a technical service provider. We do all kinds of trainings. We do specific outreach for communities. And we are, well, one of our benefits is that we are member-based. And I touched on this a little earlier when I said I'm not the smartest guy in the room. My benefit is that the Commonwealth is my territory. I touch base in every one of these towns at least 2 or 3 times a year. And so if something's happening in Quakertown that I think applies in Sharon, I connect those people together. If something is happening in Little Washington that I think works in Honesdale, I connect those two people together. And we have meetings and events that let people interact with each other. Brian was just in Mount Lebanon last week? Was it last week? I've been on the road a lot, so the days are a little squishy for me right now. It's Saturday, right? Saturday. I'm just amazed that you have this crowd on a Saturday. That's really impressive. You guys should be extraordinarily... I want to take a minute that you guys really take for granted the fact that you guys are all here on a Saturday morning because you care and want to make invested change in your communities. That's not nothing. It's impressive, and you should take stock in the fact that this big of a room will come together to find solutions and do answers, and that's really amazing. So anyway, so we have communities all over the state. As you can see, we've got a nice little collection along the west here that we didn't have 2 years ago. We've added about a half a dozen communities along the western corridor that we didn't have used there. Edinburgh and Cambridge Springs and Erie and Greenville's coming along and Greensburg, where I think, did you go down last week?
It was in Greensburg.
Greensburg just last week. So we've added a bunch of communities in the west. So you have colleagues that are nearby that are doing this work, which is really exciting because you're not alone in this work. You guys feel like you live in a bubble in Newcastle, but you're not, because other communities are doing this work, and them knowing that they're doing this work and you know that you're doing it means that it rises the tide for everyone. I will mention, for anyone that's interested, the National Main Street Center Conference is in Philadelphia next April. It's an amazing opportunity to learn more about how to make your community the community it wants to be, and talk to national leaders and people that are doing this work all over the country. It'll never be closer. In 2019, it was in Pittsburgh. That's the last time it was in Pittsburgh, and I promise you it won't be back there anytime soon. It's an incredible opportunity that anyone can attend. We'll be looking for volunteers. If you want to make the journey across the state, you can come visit me. I can tell you where all the good restaurants and dive bars are in Philadelphia if you want to come visit. I have my own opinions about cheesesteaks, and I will keep them close to my vest and share them privately. But yeah, if you want to come to that, please talk to Brian. Please reach out to us, and we would love to have as many folks come from Pennsylvania to represent our Commonwealth to the nation as possible. The Department of Community Economic Development they're not a commerce department. They're not the Office of the Budget. Their job is specifically to find and negotiate public-private partnerships and get funding from the state to improve the quality of life in your communities. It is things like the facade grant program. You guys have your own, but like the state has a facade grant program. Just recently it added an in-store program that you can get money to fix stuff on the inside of your business. It has programs for development grants for major projects. It has It helps us with things like multimodal projects and fixing up your streetscapes and doing things like that. There are so many opportunities to fund what you're trying to do through the state, and as of this year, that funding went from $6 million to $20 million. So there's a lot more in the kitty to really go around and come up with good projects. And all of my directors, we have 5 directors around the state. You guys are currently in the Southwest. You guys just shifted last year from the Northwest to the Southwest. There's a bit of a line shift there, but your person is now Jonna Pro and Stephanie Stevenson, who is her deputy, and who have been in touch with Brian. But what Jonna always tells me is that money follows good projects. If you have an idea, something you want to do, talk to the state, talk to Brian, talk to DCD, because if it's a good project, they will find you money. It may not be the money you think you're looking for, but the idea of, oh, you can just get state money for this is the wrong way to approach what you're doing. Your idea should be, come up with the idea and then talk to the state and then help them find it for you. And just so you guys know, Brian has a slide deck, and I'm sure he'll be happy to share it afterwards. So if folks want to take pictures, you can. But anybody that's interested, I'm sure if you email him afterwards, he'll be happy to share this with you guys so you can see it later. So I always see people taking pictures trying to get stuff, and it's always blurry and far away. So if you want it later, please reach out to him and he'll have it for you. There's a new program. There's an old program that has a new wrinkle on it this year. Main Street Matters is the new name of the budget that we operate from, that all of our programs operate from. And there is and again, this is sort of the money that I talked about that's available. There's planning grants, there's facade grants, there's anchor building grants, there's revolving loan funds, there's accessible housing opportunities. There are programs called the Neighborhood Assistance and NEP and NP program, Neighborhood Assistance and Neighborhood Partnership programs. And those are great programs. I know that Dawn uses one. Who's here from Dawn? There she is. Dawn Services has an NPP. And what that means is that you find a local partner that is a big business that's paying $100,000 in taxes down to Harrisburg. You partner with them and work out the deal with DCD that their they would give you $100,000 for your organization, for your nonprofit, for the CDC, and that $100,000 stays in the community, and they get up to a 90% tax credit back from the state. So here's the quick math of that. A large corporation in this community gives you $100,000, they get 90 back. That means their $10,000 that they're out of pocket, 100 then stays in the community. That's incredible. That number went up from 65 to 85 to 90. So if you know someone, a large organization or business that would like to contribute to the economic development and better well-being of this community, please have them talk to Brian right away, because that's a program that we really want to push and try to get more private businesses engaged in. But there are lots of ways to fund what you want to do here. Talk a little bit about the designation program. Brian touched on this just for a hot second. Designation is both a program and a process. It's not something you just sign up for. It's not a grant that you get. It is designed to be a process that you go through, and there are implementation parts of it, and there's a strategy that you have to implement. And we work with you, PDC and DCD work with you on both drafting that strategy and getting it to where you want it to be. There is technical service available, there are you get priority funding considerations, and there is now operational funds in that to operate for the organization. I think that's one of the main reasons that the CDC will be pushing through it this year, and they're in a great place to do that. It's not something that we do to give to organizations that are in their first steps. It is something that we want to make sure that the organization actually knows what it's doing. That's why we work through a real strategic process, and there's an outline involved. Dawn Services is a designated Elm Street in our community. So if you have questions about how it works for them, if it's working for them, you can, by all means, talk to those folks. Main Street America was founded in 1980 in 4 little communities out in the Midwest as a sort of a beta test before they used the word beta test. But to try to figure out how to revitalize towns. In the early 80s was their first wave of really the downtown sort of shifted, because that's when the shopping malls came on. So we saw our first wave of downtown sort of getting shuttered because of that. So people realized there was a need to put a focus back into downtown. I've heard several speakers here today say already, so goes the downtown, so goes the city. You have to rise that tentpole up. Eddie Rendell in Philadelphia was famous for saying, if we're going to fix anything, we start with Center City, and then everything else will wave out from there. You don't need to start out at the far end of town. You need to work from the middle and bring it up. So that's the idea. It's now a network of over 2,000 urban and rural community nationwide. We are committed on a sense of place. We're preservationists at heart. So we want you to save what you can save. We know that everything can't be saved, but we understand that, the town center out by the mall isn't a sense of place. It's just a place to shop. I say this all the time. I say it to every community I go to. If I come to your town and your best motto is a great place to live, work, and shop, I'll probably punch you in the throat. Because it's lazy and it's not anything unique to you. The mall is a great place to live, work, and shop. There's a apartment complex and a grocery store and all the things out there, but is it a sense of place? Are you from there? So we want to build up the idea of this is where you're from, and where you're from is important, valuable, and it's worth a sense of pride. And that's at the core of what the Main Street model tries to do. So we do that based on a 4-point approach. It's a patented 4-point approach that we really do. And Brian's going to watch my time and give me a 10-minute warning when I'm close, right? Great. We break this down, and I don't say that the Main Street model is the only way to revitalize your community, but what I like about it is it breaks it down in words and chunks that you can explain the work. When you say you're a community organizer, that doesn't really mean anything to people. When you say you do economic development, that's a little too heady for most folks. But when you say we're working on the design of our community because we want it to feel and look a better place, people can wrap their arms around that. And that's what I think the value of the Main Street model is. So it looks a little like this. I know these words are small on the screen, but I'm going to go over them with you so you can see what it is. But we'll start down here with organization. An organization isn't the folks that organize the parade and the Christmas events. It's how your organization runs, and we realize that is the bedrock for how we need to make change. If your organization doesn't know how to, I'm not talking about keeping minutes and Robert's rules, but if you don't file your taxes, and if you don't understand what the best practices are, and you can't be transparent to the public, and if you're not representing the people that you've said you're representing, then your organization isn't serving. And that's the part of organization we talk about. Then we'll come over here to promotion and events and marketing. And that is not just putting on a car show, not putting on a Christmas parade. It's finding events that have a narrative story that are unique to your place. My favorite event in the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is an event called Blobfest. It's all the way back there's one for me. It's all the way back in Phoenixville near Valley Forge. And Blobfest is an event that was born of the fact that in 1955, the B science fiction movie with Steve McQueen called The Blob was filmed at a movie theater in Phoenixville. And 25 years ago, Phoenixville was very much like Newcastle. It was a town where the industry had left. It was hanging on, but they had their movie theater. And whoever the programmer of the movie theater was, we should show that old movie. It was made here, I think. I heard The Blob was made here. And they started showing this movie. And a couple of years later, it sort of grew to a thing, and the cult movie people caught on to it. And they started doing an event on Friday night where they didn't show the movie, but they had like a dance party and a live old-time show there with music and comedy. And then at 7 o'clock, everybody in the theater would run screaming out on the street because that's the scene in the movie. She's been to it, I think.
I've been to every single one except last year, just so you know.
Yeah, so I'll testify back there. I've got an amen from the back. I like when I get that in the crowd. So what it did was, there's a scene in the movie where everyone runs out screaming, and so everybody in the crowd comes out, and then there's 1,000 people in the street waiting for the people in the theater to come out. And it went from this movie screening to a 3-day event with thousands of people and multiple events. But what it did was it changed the perception of the town to one that was sleepy and dead and was forgotten, to a place where cool weirdos could hang out and find themselves. And she's been there this year. She'll tell you, Phoenixville is one of the hottest neighborhoods in suburban Philadelphia. You can't get a storefront there. They're building multiple new housing units. It is incredibly successful. And I attribute it all to the Blob. But I think that what's important is that they found a thing that was theirs. It was unique to them. It created a sense of pride. There's very silly, crazy parades. So I want to encourage you, as you think about your community, to find the thing that is yours. It doesn't have to be as weird as the Blob, but whatever it is, the promotions and marketing of your event should tell the story that's here. Then we're going to come up to design. Before I came to this world, I was a location scout in the film business for 25 years. So when I think of design, I say, what kind of movie would they make if they came scouting your town? What does it feel like? Does it look like it belongs together? Does it look like it all goes together? Or is it discombobulated? Is it scrappy? It's like, what kind of movie? And then what kind of movie do you want them to make here? And everybody says, oh, we would like a Hallmark Hall of Fame movie, please, very much. We would like a romance story set in our Christmas village downtown where a big city girl comes to meet. But anyway, like that's what everybody wants. But maybe that's not for you. You know, for every town that you go to, and I want you to think about this for a little while, and in this region, everybody in this room can think of one town that they've driven through that goes, ooh, this town's a little rough. Doesn't really look like it belongs. And you can also think of at least one town that you've driven to in this region. As you drive through, going, wow, this is nice. People spent money here, I bet. And I won't name names. I think you all have them in your mind. And I don't want you to compare yourself to this, but I want you to think about what you could be doing to make your town look and feel the way you want it to look. That's design. And then we come lastly to economic vitality. I think that's a big part of what Brian's doing right now. It's not just filling every storefront. It's finding a way to fill the storefronts with the things that make sense, that make your town a robust and engaging place. If you had every storefront filled, but you had 9 vape shops, 16 pizza parlors, and 6 nail salons, it wouldn't be a great mix of businesses to bring people downtown. And listen, I have a lot of towns with way too many pizza shops and too many nail salons, so I'm not calling anyone out, but like that's a thing. Those are the things that tend to fill in. We're seeing a big trend in the state right now where people are moving in with skill games, and we have whole downtowns. Greenville has 3 full buildings of skill games. It's a little mini casino town now. It's really not great. That's not good economic vitality. That's not the mix you want. So economic vitality is working with people and finding that you have the right mix. It's working with public-private partnerships. It's making sure that you're dealing with people at the commercial real estate level to make sure that your downtown feels like the kind of downtown where people want to come and shop and spend money. So that's the Main Street. Why does it work? It works because it impacts us on every single level that makes change: social, political, economic, and physical. And when you look at these across the board, you see that we're changing perceptions, we're collaborating, we're doing investment, and we're improving the visual and feel of our neighborhood. So if you want to affect how someone physically feels, physically is how we feel. If you don't feel safe, if it feels unsafe and dirty, you don't want to go there. So you change how people feel by changing the design of the street. If it's not safe to cross the street in your downtown because it's too much of a highway, you fix that so people feel safe walking on your streets. If you have issues with political turmoil in the area and people are just factioning and fighting each other, and the county hates the city and the city hates the business association, all this stuff, it's the Main Street's job to be the gap builder, to be the conduit, to be the thread that pulls them back together. That's what we do. And from the social level, we're looking at changing perception. And again, that story about Blobfest changed the perception of a sleepy, dead little town to a place where people could find themselves, and then they grew there. Talking just in terms of the money invested, this is since 1987. This is Main Street programs across the state. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but just to show you that we keep track of the numbers and they're good. We can demonstrate that this program works. And that's what I want to share. I'm not going to go through these numbers with you, and again, you can see them later in the slide. A couple of projects that we've been working on, other communities we're working by example. Brian mentioned that some of the communities are really working on their waterways. We were just in Honesdale last month for a manager's meeting, and they have a river sort of like yours. It's really underutilized. It's sort of there, and no one knows it's there. So they've got a major investment project to open up their river and put a water park in so people can just sit on. Surprise, people like to sit by the river. Philadelphia just figured it out after 100 years, after polluting and jamming up their river, and they just figured it. But look at Pittsburgh. Look at the change in Pittsburgh when people realize, if you just put a walking path there, people love it. So Honesdale's doing just that. In Wilkes-Barre, they had this weird sort of square thing in the park, and they transformed it into a pavilion and stage, and they're doing live concerts there. They also had a vacant space between 2 buildings, just like you guys did, and they got investiture to turn it into a better walkway, better lighting, and an event space. It's not so much a casual park, but it's now a gathering place between 2 buildings. And what's important is, it is a conduit between the college that's on campus. It makes the passageway from Wilkes College onto campus that much more traversable. So they're bringing the college kids that didn't feel safe about getting onto the Main Street, down onto the Main Street. And then we talk about Easton. I think Easton is something that you guys are looking real hard at, because what Easton did was took a vacant building that was a child care center that had been defunct for many years and transformed it into one of the finest urban markets in the Commonwealth. It's really amazing what they did. It's a big old space. It looks a lot like a Rite Aid that was able to convert it into multiple vendors and food vendors and cooking classes and it is 100% a driver and hub of activity in that community. That's the sort of thing that a Main Street can do when they find the focus and they find their challenge and they find what they're going to do. I have some examples of possibilities in Newcastle. I did these about a year and a half ago for Brian's predecessor as a facade grant program. But it's about looking at sort of the things that you could be doing and having ideas and having a vision as to what they could be. These are just facade improvements, but when you make these sort of choices and there's a consistency to them, then suddenly the town has a better hang together. So these are just some ideas that I did for her over a year ago. You guys can use these if you want. I'm going to spend about 6 minutes. How have I got?
About 10.
About 10, perfect. Excellent. I've got 10 minutes. I'm going to spend a few quick minutes talking about what the guiding principles of Main Street are and why this works the way that it does. We look at these principles and we say that it's not just that you do it. It's how you do it and why you do it. Anybody can put on a parade. Anybody can put on a arts fair and put people on the street. Anybody can fix up the fronts of your buildings. But why you do it is as important, and how you do it is as important as that you do it. So we're going to talk about the principles which we guide by. First of all is the comprehensive approach. We believe that this approach is designed to work in concert, to work in union. If you're all events, if you're all doing events, if that's what you're doing, it's super valuable, but it's not revitalization. If you're just fixing up the storefronts, that's super valuable, but it's not revitalization. Working in concert with all these 4 points will demonstrate change, and that's what we're talking about. If you have a chair with 2 legs, it won't stand. If you have a car with 3 wheels, it won't drive. The only way you're going to motivate change is if you use everything together and there's a narrative thread between them. We talk about incremental change. I often tell all my managers who get burned out really easily that this is a big boat and it takes a long time to turn it. And the example I like to give is everybody wants a unicorn. Everybody wants the magic unicorn. But if you go to the carnival, you guys have a county fair, right, somewhere? You guys been to the thing with a squirt gun and you blow the balloon up, and what do you win? You win the little frog. But if you give them another $10, you can get 2 frogs, and you get to $40, you get 3 frogs. You get 4 frogs, you can get the teddy bear. You give them $125, you can get 4 teddy bears. And then you get 4 teddy bears, then you can get the unicorn. You have to understand that we have to not only you have to build for incremental change, we celebrate the incremental change as it goes, because that's how we show progress. We're going to talk a little bit about self-help, and that's not the self-help that the definition of what we talk about self-help now, about sort of like making sure you're okay and I'm okay, and checking in on each other, because that's really important, by the way. That's a big part of what I do, actually. Total sidebar, a big part of my job is to check in on my managers, because they are often armies of one in towns where they're the only people that do this work, and they don't have anybody to talk to about it. Like, how many people have friends that are teachers? How many people know that teachers struggle every day? But you know what teachers have? A whole building full of other people that are in the struggle with them. So they talk to each other about it and they can let that go. Nurses, people that are in high stress positions have colleagues. People that are my Main Street managers or my quarter managers often do it in a town where they don't get to talk about it with each other. So I get to be the one to talk about them. But what I would encourage you to do as people in this community, check on how, not just how the work is doing, but how the human is doing. But that's not what we're talking about self-help. We're talking about self-help here about pulling our communities up by our bootstraps and finding the people in your communities to do a grassroots effort. We believe that Main Street functions best when it has a broad base of a lot of volunteers and a lot of people that are engaged, and knowing that your stakeholders cover every segment of your population. That's self-help to us. That's making sure that this is a community-based operation, not a developer coming in from Philadelphia and telling you what you should be doing. That's self-help. We talk about partnership building. That's defining the roles of the public and private sector. We talked about that a little bit with DCED and their relationship with you guys, but it's also understanding that there are multiple places and multiple points of contact that the Main Street organization is the conduit, it is the pass-through, often between the municipality and the business community, often between the business community and the residential community, and so forth. So it's about building partnerships and doing that. It's being selfless and understanding that the mission is what's important, and that if the mission works, then you need help, you get a partner to do it. We talk about asset building, and I think assets is something that it's not as complicated as it sounds, but it bears explaining. Asset building is any tool or thing that you have that you should be using to build from to make your town a better place. Anything. It could be technical, it could be physical, it could be geographic, it could be a human, it could be a local celebrity that lived in your town in the 40s, and you need to bring that, you need to put a statue of him up so people come and visit. You know, Johnny Weissmuller is from Pennsylvania. There's a statue of him down in, it's right outside of Windbeer. Thank you. Who said that?
Tim Fulkerson.
Yeah. So there's this, but like,
They got a statue of him in the high school.
yeah, Johnny Weissmuller. Do you guys know who Johnny Weissmuller was? People of a certain age all know who Johnny Weissmuller is. You're definitely showing who you are. But you know, who is it? Who is the statue that's down in? I can't remember towns. Anyway, my point is, it'll come to me in a minute.
Jimmy Stewart.
Well, Jimmy Stewart in Indiana, certainly. My favorite thing about Indiana. How many of you have crossed Philadelphia Street in Indiana? Tell me what happens when you cross Philadelphia Street in Indiana.
This is Jimmy Stewart speaking. Please walk in.
Yeah. So when you push the button, instead of saying "cross now," it's "Hi, this is Jimmy Stewart. It's okay to cross Philadelphia Street. Glad you came." And like that's so charming and ridiculous, but it's amazing. And it's memorable. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like, you were there. It's a thing that's tied to there. That's what you can do. So understand you have assets. What I would like the room to tell me 3 assets that you think are underutilized in this town. Anybody? 1.
Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers.
Fireworks.
Fireworks. What?
Our historic architecture.
Architecture. Excellent.
Waterways.
The waterways. See, you have them. And you're not using any of them nearly as effectively as you could, because before I came here, I didn't know any of those were a thing. I do now, because I've been working here and hanging out, but like, I didn't know that this was the fireworks capital of Pennsylvania. Okay then. But see, that's a thing. Like, that's a thing. And all right, so let's talk about quality. I have some communities that really are just trying to do everything everywhere all at once. That's not the way. I would rather you do 2 things well than do 100 things and not do them very well. I think it's Ron Swanson who says it best. It's better to do 1 thing whole-assed than 2 things half-assed. So make sure that what you're doing, and it's lasting, it survives the project process, and it does a one and. I like to say and one with any of the quality things we do. Implementation is the ability to complete what you say you do. There's nothing worse than saying we're going to do something and not doing it, because it breaks down the civic trust immediately. We're going to end poverty. We're going to end poverty in America. That's a little too broad. We're going to fix this building. And then it doesn't happen for 10 years, and that building just sits there. People stop believing you. So learn to gauge what you can do, say what you can do, and deliver. And finally, we talk about transformative change. And transformative change is the idea that we're looking at where you want to be. The phrase I most often use is, what do you want to be when you grow up? There's always, this was a thing I always thought as a kid. I thought the caterpillar grew wings. The caterpillar doesn't grow wings. The caterpillar's entire body is destroyed inside the cocoon, and it becomes something different. That means that when you commit to change, it's going to be hard. It's going to be, you're going to lose some things in the process. But you're going to change to the thing you want to be, and that's what we talk about when we talk about transformative change. And we're going to lead us right to this slide, where we talk about the transformative strategy. And the transformative strategy model of Main Street is to take the thing that you want to become and have a narrative thread of all of the different aspects of Main Street and have it run through it. For instance, if you realize that you want to be a town that focuses on tourism, or on the arts, or on recreational outdoors, or you have a tech hub, or you realize you're a farming-based community, you have those things. That's a narrative thread that you're going to run through your strategy. It's a strategic approach based on highlighting and changing the perception of what you want people to think of you and your community and your stakeholders. So for instance, if we do that through the arts, this is the easy one, this is the layup for me. If you want to be known as an arts community, there are specific things that you did that if you did all of them, people would believe it. If you want to be known as an arts community, you don't have any art on the walls or on your street anywhere, people aren't going to believe it. So put up some murals, put up some street art. Figure out how to do that, because then when people come to your town, they're like, oh, that's pretty, it's bright color, it's nice, all these things. Make sure I say this very seriously, have a plan for your art. Don't randomly just put up art. That doesn't help. But if you have, even the art should have a narrative. For From an organizational committee, you're going to get an artist advisory committee. You're going to get the creative people in the room to sort of get together to come up with ideas. That's organization. From a promotion standpoint, you're going to do a spring arts walk. Or, the one I love is a plein air art show. Do you guys know what that is? Anybody know what that is? A plein air art show is when you invite 30 or 40 painters and they come and paint your town. And so the idea of that is if you come to town on a Saturday and there's 40 people painting, what is it that you suddenly realize about your town? Well, there's creative people everywhere. I didn't know this. Look how arts-based we are. We have all this. And then what I love about the outdoor art show, the outdoor painting show, is not only do you have people perceiving you as an arts community, but you have artists looking at buildings and shapes and spaces through a lens that you have never seen before, and suddenly you're able to see beauty in things that you have never seen. And I love that idea. And then from an economic vitality standpoint, you could create live-work studios, or even more simply, I've got a vacant space and I say, hey Tom, we just had this outdoor art show where all these painters were here. Can I fill up this gallery for 2 months and sell the art in it? And then suddenly that's a continuing effort of that. So what you're doing is you have a narrative thread of all these different capacities that say that when people start to put these things together in their brain, not even on purpose, they'll start to recognize, oh wow, there's creativity and arts here. I didn't even realize how much there was, but it's always here in this narrative thread, and that's how you make change. Is that you find the thing that you want to be, you have all the things you're doing, put focus on it. So the key benefits of Main Street are it's a broader economic engagement, it's an increased impact, you have tangible and quantifiable outcomes, you have greater organizational flexibility, and I say this very seriously, that organizational flexibility is about sometimes saying no. Sometimes flexibility means we've got a plan and we're sticking to it, so we can do what we're doing. That's a huge one. And it is more relevant in more communities because it comes from the ground up here. What I love about the Main Street model is that at its heart, it teaches us to be better storytellers because it gives us all the parts of a good story. You have a plot, you have characters, you have events that are the things that happen. You have a theme, you have a style and tone, and you have a point of view. When we're good storytellers, when we make a better effort to tell the story of what we're doing in our community, more people want to hear it. That's why repertoire theater works. That's why reruns work. That's why people read the Harry Potter books over and over and over and over again. Because good storytelling matters. And the Main Street model allows you all the pieces to tell your story again. And lets not just him tell it, but you tell it, and you tell it, and you tell it. And then it grows, and then people believe it. And then you see change. The Main Street job, so my question to you is, and this is a takeaway question, we won't answer now, but I want you to think for a little while about what kind of revitalization you want to accomplish. What is the change you seek? And what is your vision for the community? What is the thing that you want to be when you're done? What do you want to be when you grow up? This one's way too hard to see for most of you guys, except for in the front row, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. But the idea here is that if you are lacking something in this plan, if you need vision, resources, skills, action plans, action plan is a to-do list, is an actual way to do it, and you don't have any urgency, you're going to lack in things. So if you lack vision, people are confused about what you do. If you can't be clear about what the organization's mission is and where you're going, people don't care and they're going to lose interest. If you lack resources, people are frustrated. Nothing worse than having great ideas and not the resources to accomplish them. If you lack the skills, people have anxiety. How many people have started a job that they got and then didn't necessarily know what the job was and then had to do the job? The term fake it till you make it, no one's heard of fake it till you make it? You're anxious the whole time though. And that's what skills result in. Without an action plan, we talked about this, you end up with false starts and people don't believe you're going to do it because you keep saying you're going to do it and you're not. Without a sense of urgency, and this is an important one because without urgency, you still get change. But it's so gradual, people don't notice it so they don't even care. But if you put them all together, you get real change. The Main Street's job, usually perceived, and I love this slide because it usually gets the most laughs, is to reverse decades of global economic trends, make every business profitable, fill every vacant space, increase the local tax base and job base, ensure that every event is packed, raise the millions of dollars it will take to do this, including their own salary, and do it all before the next election. That's not a real job. That's an impossibility. This is our job. And this is the outgoing president of Main Street. She just left last year, but in her closing speech, she left us with this. And she said that our job is not to make 100% of people happy. It's not to make people comfortable. Our job is to make change. Because if you're in this room today, you believe that change is necessary for your community. You want something better. You want something different. You don't want status quo. And just like the butterfly, it's going to be hard, but it's going to be beautiful when you come out. So that's what I have for you today. I have some contact information here, and I'm going to stick around for the rest of the afternoon to answer questions. I'm out of time, so I'm not going to take questions now, so I will take questions at the end. If anyone wants to talk to me, I'll be in the back for the rest of the day. So thank you guys for your time today. I'm super encouraged by your town. Every time I've come back here in the last, I've been coming here for about 18 months since Angie was here. I've been coming sort of checking in on Newcastle, checking in on the Elm Street program out west. You have a great partner in Don in the Elm Street out west, or out east, sorry, east, Lower East Side. I don't know why I said west, because I'm in the west for me. You have a great partnership and opportunities with some of the other organizations going on here. I encourage you to make sure you're working in concert with them, but be encouraged. Rooms like this, where we have this many people that want to make impacts, are remarkable. So take that for what it is, and don't let today be the last day that you guys see each other and talk about your ideas. I encourage you that as you leave, make sure you get in contact with someone you don't know and say, I'm going to follow up with you about something that we heard. It's a great way to make sure that this is not a one-off day. It's a continuation that is going to continue a momentum that's going to change. You know, momentum is as good as tomorrow's pitcher, but we got to keep it going. So I encourage you, and thank you for your time. I really appreciate you welcoming me back.
Let me just mention a few things, and then we're going to take a 15-minute break. If anybody needs to use the restroom, get something else to drink or eat, please help yourself. Bill is an awesome guy, and we thank him for traveling and sharing the statewide perspective on community revitalization. Thanks to Bill, this year I've been in Du Bois, Beaver, Ambridge, Mount Lebanon, Greensburg, York. So it is important to sometimes go outside our community, see what's working elsewhere, what strategies, ideas they've implemented, and I'm bringing them back, and we're going to start to see additional change take place in Newcastle. Last thing I'll say, he mentioned Main Street Matters. The CDC of Newcastle, we are going to go after additional facade grant money and business improvement grant money. That application is due next month. Chris Frye and I have already started working on that. We're going to apply for additional funding to keep the program going and help encourage additional reinvestment in downtown and new businesses. The CDC is an active member of the Pennsylvania Downtown Center, and we're going to implement the Main Street model. Whether we get designation from the state or not, the process is what's going to help revitalize our community. And then last thing, I'll close on a little bit of good news. We found out this week, Chris Frye and I applied on behalf of the city. We were approved by the Pennsylvania Department of Community Economic Development for a strategic management planning grant. It's going to cover the cost of doing an updated comprehensive plan for the city of Newcastle with an emphasis on downtown, and to update the zoning ordinance in the city of Newcastle. Both of those things haven't been done in a long time, and they need done, and they will help us. And then once we have that plan to pull together the pieces, that helps us go after additional funding and have action items to accomplish as we move forward. So with that, let's take a 15-minute break, and we come back and we have two great panels. You're going to hear about examples that really worked in the city of Newcastle. 15-minute break. These gentlemen for coming here on a Saturday morning. And then many of you know Linda Nitch. Linda worked in economic development for many years, and she's now the senior grant writer for Dawn Enterprises. So with that, Ash is going to speak first, then Tim, then Linda. And at the end, if anybody has any questions, I'm sure they'd be glad to entertain the questions here or afterwards. Ash.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. I would start off with a thank you to everyone here. Like I said, it's certainly encouraging to see the crowd, to see the excitement, and hopefully channel some of that enthusiasm. Big thanks to you, Brian, for putting it on. I'll start with two disclaimers. The first one, I'm here on behalf of Allgyer Enterprises. That's my wife and my development company we started on the side. I do some work for Big Four Consultancy. I do work for some private equity real estate companies. Anything I mentioned today is squarely what we're doing on the personal side here in Newcastle. The second thing I'd say, I'm going to spend some time going through the Temple building and what that redevelopment will look like. I can't be more crystal clear. That is not because of me. That is not because of us. That's in spite of us. And I'll get into that in a few seconds. As we talk through it, there's a couple themes I'm going to pull from what Bill said a moment ago, or a few moments ago. I start with just by background. I'm a CPA by background. I am not a real estate developer. Until 2 years ago, I didn't pretend I was a real estate developer. I'm a CPA, I'm an accountant. I do a bit of consulting work for large banks, mortgage companies, and the like. We started working in multifamily real estate, found out I enjoyed it, found out I loved it, and been devoting more and more time there. So much, in fact, that I'm doing a major career path shift and that I'm jumping on board with a real estate company full time. And that all started here because of the Temple building and because of Newcastle. The last disclaimer that I'll make is we did not fall in love with Newcastle as quickly as we fell in love with the building. So if I'm speaking transparently, we were looking for redevelopment opportunities at the beginning of COVID, and we had set a path from, call it Cleveland, all the way east to Harrisburg, with a focus on city centers, small city centers, brick buildings, underutilized, that could be redeveloped. That landed us in Newcastle. That landed us with the building that we did redevelop. Since then, we fell in love with Newcastle. We fell in love with this group of folks, which is why we've continued to devote time and attention here. We continue to work down that same path. We've got this project going on. We are started on a project out in Mercer County, and we just went under contract this weekend on another project in Ambridge. Our focus is city centers where we think there's revitalization opportunities. Our focus is around office buildings that we don't think the demand is there, that are easily redeveloped into multifamily space. Brian gave me, I think, 7 to 8 minutes today. I could love to go 30 minutes on why I think multifamily is the play. We can talk about what it does for communities. We can talk about how it is that starting impetus to turn that revitalization around, and I'm happy to do that. I don't have the time to devote to that today, but I'm a big, big believer in the model. Now, talk about what the project was. I mentioned my finance background, so I'm most familiar with the numbers of it. Firm believer, numbers are gatekeepers. Numbers don't tell stories. People tell stories. So to adequately tell the stories, I'll do a couple quick bios on what some of those tenants look like, but that's how we tell stories. I think Bill spoke to it too, to be good storytellers on what's happening in our downtown, what's happening in our county, and kind of emanating that story out is a big, big piece of it. The numbers are just a component, a necessary component of it, but numbers alone don't tell stories. So, for those not familiar, Temple building, call it a block that way, get to the library, turn left, we're right on the corner. Purchased the building from Tom Wilson, who's actually here in the audience today, call it 2 years ago at this point. Some fast facts, and just trying to put the quick view around what we're looking for and how it worked. Just trying to plant the seeds to how it worked. Well-maintained building, operational elevator, fantastic structure that was, of course, well-maintained and in good shape. And in that case, office space, this would have been right in the middle of COVID, underutilized office space to see that redevelopment opportunity. I can't thank enough a lot of the people in this audience. When I think of the mayor's office, Mayor Elisco now, Administrator Frye, planning, commissions, codes, everybody working with us, hand in hand, transparent, good relationship, how do we make this happen? Having said that, an important point, one I can't emphasize enough, is we take a lot of pride in when we did this project, zero government money, zero grant money, zero subsidized loans. Entirely private project with entirely local contractors. 3/4 of which including a general contractor from Newcastle. The reason I want to emphasize that is because I've done it and I know the numbers work. The grants are important, the loans are important, I think they kickstart all of it, but if we're going to sit here and tell ourselves we can't do it without that, we're wrong, we're lying to ourselves, and we're being lazy. The numbers work. So that's the quick look. What we did is we took the 5th floor and the 4th floor of that building, we relocated 2 existing tenants down to existing floors, converted the 5th floor into apartments, converted the 4th floor into apartments, and right now at this point, we just came through a planning and city council meeting earlier this week to get approval to do the 3rd floor as well. After the 3rd floor, we're stopping. Part of our thesis, our investment hypothesis is that you keep those bottom 2 floors for retail and office and community service organizations. So each of those floors is 7 units, 2 bedrooms. So once we have the 3rd floor done, there'll be a total of 21 units, 18 2 bedrooms, and 3 1-bedroom units. To better tell that story though, I want to flip to the next slide. Those are not doctored pictures, those are live pictures of what we did. Stainless steel appliances, it's granite countertops. We're pretty proud of the way they turned out. I threw the timeline across the bottom. Go back to where I started in that this project happened in spite of us. I'm going to borrow from Bill again, and that you fake it till you make it. We had no business doing this project. Between myself and my GC, we had never attempted anything of this size at any point before, nor did we know what we were getting into. I would say I straight up blew it on the construction budget. I straight up blew it on what I thought the rents would be. The fortunate point is I blew the construction budget too low, and I also blew the rents too low. If I'd have blown them different ways, I'd have problems. Took us about a year from the time we bought the property until we were ready to go live with the 1st floor apartments. We did the 5th floor first. The important point that this group needs to come away with, if I look at that, call it a year and a week. So give me 53 weeks from I own the building until I have 5th floor renovated, 7 brand new apartments ready to go. We did 1 open house. I'm too lazy to do showings. We did 1 open house, advertised it on Facebook Marketplace and Zillow only. One afternoon, we had 40 applications. At the end, so that was a Saturday. It took me, call it 4 days to sort through everything. By the end of those 4 days, we had 14 apartments fully leased up. And that was 7 apartments that we hadn't even delivered yet. That was 7 that were going live. The 4th floor was coming next. That ultimately came on board in October. Everything of those second half of apartments were all pre-leased based on 1 open house. The last point I want to leave with is I struggled going back and forth on does the project work, what are the market rents, what does it look like, is there demand there? Satisfied myself on the demand. There's demand that we don't think about. And what I take a lot of hope from is if I go back to People Tell Stories, the profile of those residents are Newcastle people who want to live downtown. I struggled with the online community and the bashing and the Newcastle's not what it was and all that nonsense. We have 14 units of people who want to live downtown. We are regularly turning away residents, which is why 3rd floor is now getting done. These are people who work at the courthouse, they work at Jameson, they work at Walmart, they work for travel agencies, they're in management at Walmart, who want to live downtown, whose salary supports rents far and above of what we have listed on that slide. The demand is there, and they can't find that housing. The last thing I'd say is we fully support home ownership. We do not consider ourselves an out-of-town investor. We do not want to be an out-of-town investor. We do not want to be absentee collecting rents. That's not our model. That's not how we want to do things. We want to encourage home ownership, and we actively work with tenants as to how they make that happen for them. There will always be a need for transition housing. There will always be a need for that housing where you don't have the maintenance or for shorter term. That's what we want to provide. So that's the quick story on the building. We'd be happy to chat with others on investment thesis, how we think about it, the profile of those tenants that we have now. I'm not going to pretend we did it right. We still have ongoing management where we're trying to figure out the management, get that fine-tuned. We're trying to fine-tune how we deal with the commercial tenants in the building to make sure they're getting the service they know and deserve. And there's growing pains, but we're going to figure it out, and we're an open book and happy to share those stories. It's your turn.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tim Fulkerson, and I started in this business in 1989. A lot of you may be that old, and some of you may not. I started out with the former Klein lumber building, and I transported that into what I call a mini manufacturing. And we bought it off the Nader family, and within a year, we had 8 different businesses in that building. Then from there, I went in and I bought the Sussex Apartments up on Mercer Street. And then from there, I come into the downtown area and I bought the former Supreme building, furniture building on the corner of East Washington and Cochran Way. It's 20 East Washington Street. Then from there, I bought the former Kirkutton Hardware Company, and that I transferred into one building. 20 and 24 are one building now. It houses a gymnasium. It houses 60 employees. That's a lot. Then we went over and we bought the Zambelli family building. But in between that, I bought another apartment house off the Zambellis on Route 18 next to Pizza Man's. We renovated that and we ended up selling that to another person. But in all our projects, I've invested $4 million. It's a lot of money. No help from the state, no help from the feds, and I applaud you. I really do. I did activate the city's loan program, and I thank the city councils of the past and that for working with me, and I have paid my debts. I'm still paying them. And we had to sign for them personally, but that's fine. We have 8 apartments in the Zambelli building on the 3rd and 4th floor. As Ash here has spoken, no problem renting them out. Our rents go from $800 to $1,200 a month. That includes the utilities. So you pay one bill except to the cable company. I have a lot of singles in there, and I have a lot of women in there too. So it works out nice, and I have a waiting list. My problem is I'm out of building space. I can't go any further. But it can work. But the thing with Newcastle is this, and I'm going to speak from the heart, because you either like me or you hate me. And I really don't care one way or the other. I've always said that, okay? Because I'm going to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay? I've seen lots of plans. I've kept everything when I was the mayor. And I got so many different opinions of what to do to downtown and that. I call them dust collectors. That's what they are. They collect dust. They don't collect results. The problem with downtown Newcastle, it's a great place to live. It's a great place to do business. We're in a flood zone. Does anybody know the last time we had a flood?
115 years ago.
How many?
I think 115 years.
You're right. 1919. 1919. What is today's date? What year are we in?
24.
Okay. So the Army Corps of Engineers built a dam up in Sharpsville to relieve the Shenango River of flooding. But everybody else is out of the flood zone except Newcastle. Why is that? You got an answer?
I wish I did.
Well, it's called the Neshannock Creek. That creek over there is what's stopping us from getting out of the flood zone. Now, I've been doing this since the early 90s, before I became mayor, of fighting the flood zone, because you have to pay to FEMA. If you have a mortgage, you have to pay to FEMA. And what happens? Every time there's a national disaster, the FEMA rates go up. So, who pays for that? You. I. But our tenants pay for it too. That's a big problem. So we're $2 to $3 a square foot, maybe, in our flood insurance, that we can't compete with the outlying areas in Lawrence County. Now, I've been to Harrisburg, I've been to Washington, I've been up at the county courthouse, I've been to City Hall. Oh, Tim, we're going to work on it. We're going to work on it. Bullshit. They haven't worked on it. They haven't. Mr. Kelly, please. If somebody from Kelly's office is here, because it's a federal, it's with the Army Corps of Engineers. We need to relieve the building owners of this flood insurance. I've had major investors that look at that property right across the street, Mr. Vizdak's property, that they want to do something with it. But it takes millions. They're not going to use all their cash to buy the property and then renovate it. And then they got to pay a flood insurance premium on top of that. It's not worth it. There's investors here, real investors, not daydreamers, real investors. And they'll tell you, it don't make sense. I want it to change. I'd love to put more money in downtown Newcastle. I really would. But we need to change that. We need to get our politicians to change it. You want to really do something for downtown Newcastle? Force the issue. There are different plans out there. I sat with the Army Corps of Engineers. So what we need to do is find a place along the Neshannock Creek, not river, creek, to build a tributary or a lakefront that when the water comes up high, that it can flow into there and slowly be released so that downtown Newcastle can get out of the flood zone. This is a major part of downtown Newcastle, renovations. It really is. And if you don't think so, you're only fooling yourself. Because I can't tell you how many hundreds of thousands I have given to the insurance companies over the last 25 years. I'm talking hundreds of thousands. I could reduce my rents if it wasn't for the flood insurance. So when you want to talk about a major investor coming to this community, you have to give them incentives. I'm not saying give them money all the time, because most of the people we gave money to didn't fulfill the dream. I can't tell you how many pictures are up at City Hall in the archives of what they were going to do to downtown Newcastle. You know, we could wallpaper this building and more with all the pictures. And they never came, but they got money. There's the dreamers. We need doers. Ash is a doer. He's a doer. And he did it because he wanted to do it. And he didn't wait for the state or the city or everybody else to give him money. He did it on his own. And that's the type of people we're trying to find. But also, if you could come up with an incentive that if you can't relieve the flood zone, then the city government and the county government got to look at ways of giving back something in a tax rebate so that can offset their premium. They have to prove they're paying the flood insurance and then give them a tax break or something that would help. That way they can lower their rents and you'll fill these storefronts and you'll get investors to invest in downtown Newcastle. I know a lot of you probably don't want to hear this, but that's the truth. We need to work that way. And I think right now you have a government with the county and the city that can work hand in hand to improve this. Thank you.
Tim, thank you for all the investment you've made in downtown. And I tried to pull up his website, the Henley Banquet Center, if you haven't seen it, on South Mercer Street. It's the Neshannock Creek Brewery's in the front, the Henley Banquet Center's in the back. It's a beautiful facility. The apartments, he toured me on them earlier this year. They're beautiful apartments, so thank you for your investment in downtown. So we had two private developers. Now we're going to hear from a very large nonprofit organization, Dawn Enterprises, Linda
Thank Thank you, everyone. It's good to see all of you this morning. And yes, I'm Linda Nitch. I am now the senior grant writer for Dawn Enterprises, Dawn Services. And it is wonderful that we have an opportunity to invest into the community in a very different way than these two gentlemen, because it's more of the public sector dollars that we use, not the private sector. So a little bit about Dawn, because it is very confusing. Dawn is Disability Options Network. It was started by the founder, Mr. Chris Lloyd, well over 25, 30 years ago. And at that time, it was really dedicated to people who have disabilities through something called the Center for Independent Living. We have a dedicated group of persons who themselves have disabilities. They take in calls, we are a federally funded organization from that standpoint, looking to help people who have these disabilities and who need assistance in going through the various programs that are out there for them. In addition to Disability Options Network, we have Dawn Services. Dawn Services is what a lot of you know because we provide home care attendance for a wide variety of people, over 27 different counties in Pennsylvania, but really concentrating a lot here in Western Pennsylvania. That encompasses most of the people that you hear we employ, which is about 550 to 600 persons at any one time. So we have been anywhere from the second to the third largest employer here in Lawrence County. Finally, there's Dawn Enterprises. Recognizing that people who have disabilities many times have a hard time in getting home ownership and finding the right groups that can help them overcome whatever the problems are that they have, means that there needed to be another part to the organization. And that is Enterprises, where we go ahead and we have our various programs that we offer. It is accessible housing, because what's most important to people, if you don't have a home to live in, if it's not accessible, then you're unable to really survive in the community. So we have our accessible housing. Next, there's a recognition that revitalization is so important. We know that our community needs a lot more attention, and Dawn went out of its way to identify locations throughout the city of Newcastle where they could really make an impact. And what I'm wearing right now is our Elm Street program that we work with the PA Downtown Center. Bill Arrowood is in our office at least twice a year to learn more about what we're doing from a revitalization standpoint, especially the Lower East Side that we've renamed the East Side Grove. Finally, employment. We employ lawyers, community development experts who assist us in making the community more of a better place for all to live and work and play. Sorry for using that, Bill. Anyway, let's talk about these.
It's okay if that's not all you are.
Okay.
If that's all you are, then you can, and I will say that they do more than that. They're much more than that.
We sure are. Kenny Rice is our Elm Street manager, and Kenny is a phenomenal person who has been dedicating himself for the last 4 years to improving the East Side Grove, the Lower East Side. We coordinate with the Downtown Center, and Bill gave us a lot of his finer points of how the PA Downtown Center organizes itself. Well, we take that organization and we put it to work here in Newcastle. Safe, clean, and green. How do we improve the East Side Grove? And one of the best ways to do that, from especially the green standpoint, is by having Farrell Playground improved, by having an orchard and a community garden that is there. And we're working on that right now. Next, neighbors and economy. There's been $100,000 worth of facade work that has been done in the lower East Washington area, and that's a result of dollars that are coming from DCED and working with the PA Downtown Center. Design. You need to know that the community has to not only be part of its history, but how do we make the design going forward? And we've worked with Eccles Architecture regarding new homes. Now, image and identity, we all need to be proud of our community. I'm glad that Tim talked about the fact that, you have to fight for the community, but we're all here because we are proud of it and we want to make it a better place that we can all say is a great home for us. Finally, a sustainable organization. Bill came up to me and said, you know what, Linda, it makes a difference that Dawn is a broad-based organization with over 550 people and a significant number of people who are in administration. We can make things happen that others can't because we do talk in the office. We do have that support system that he commented about that is many times needed within organizations. So let's talk about new home builds. How do we do the deeper dive into what our community needs? Home builds are extremely important. With most of our housing, especially in the city of Newcastle, being about 100 years old, it is not accessible. And since Dawn is there really for persons with disabilities, we need to build homes that have that accessibility. We've worked with the Federal Home Loan Bank to build homes, and I think that Chris, Danny, Dan Kennedy can all attest to the fact that they look out of the courthouse and they can see the new homes that have been built there on that lower east side, that East Side Grove, which basically extends from Croton Avenue up to Butler, Census Tract 6, if any of you are familiar with that. Well, how do we go ahead and make sure that we have those new homes and the home buyers ready to go? That's Anita McKeever. Anita, raise your hand there, my dear. Anita is one of my co-workers, and she and I share our offices right next door to one another, and I know how hard she works to make sure that people who maybe don't have that helping hand that they need learn from her how to budget, how to really be prepared to own a home. She is HUD certified, and if any of you really need that one-on-one for someone to obtain a home, then Anita's your person to contact. So, I said that East Side Grove, from blight to bright, that's really something that we believe in. And I think that the community has really seen a change in that. We know that with the community garden, with the facade improvements, and with other improvements that are gone on in that area, there's been a real change in the mindset there. Janice Hassan is responsible for a large part to doing housing rehabilitation. We know we have a lot of older homes. We know that we have people who very much want to keep their homes, but have a hard time affording them in this day and age. And to that end, we make sure that we work with the county, with the state, to obtain housing dollars that we can use to invest into those homes. Community revitalization. Kudos to both of these gentlemen for all the hard work that they've done and the private dollars they've invested. You know, we have a little different mentality as far as it goes because Dawn is a nonprofit organization, but Dawn reached out and did purchase the central building, did put a new roof on it, and have really made sure that we are utilizing that central building. Tim's absolutely right. That floodplain insurance does make a difference in how costly it is to maintain these buildings, and it has increased our lease costs. But we're very fortunate in the fact that CareerLink is there on the ground floor of the central building. Colleen Chamberlain, hey Colleen, thank you for coming. She is the administrator for that organization, and it is wonderful that they're able to utilize that facility. Additionally, our own offices are there, as well as the Learning Center and others. In fact, we continue. It's 77,000 square feet of space, and it is very difficult to find offices, users for all of this space. So we work at that all the time, and most recently we've had the neighborhood legal services that have come in, but these are other building spaces that we have available. And it's nice to have that garage that's there. So let's go on. The Wright Building. I guess before my tenure ends as far as my work in community and economic development in Lawrence County, I'd like to find enough resources financially to redevelop the Wright building. It is a phenomenal building. There's been $1 million of investment on the masonry work on the exterior. And if you think those windows are real, they're not that are inside that building. On both sides, those are faux windows that somebody had some creativity. We worked with Bill to say, hey, how do we go about putting something in place that makes it look attractive as we finish the exterior? We've got a elevator that needs to be replaced, and Ash, you were lucky enough you got a building with an elevator. Not so with us, it's not working. So you have 5 floors of building there that needs to be redeveloped. And we really want to herald the fact that we are there close to the courthouse, that government center with all of the activities that go on there. It's a nice beacon, but it needs a lot more efforts that need to be put into it to make it work. So, Union Station Distillery. Hey, David and Rod are doing a great job, and we've commented about them earlier today. But that still, and have that bar, and just the funness of all of that is a great way to keep on stimulating our local economy. You might not know that we now have a new tenant that is leasing space from us in the restaurant that is across the street from the distillery. That's Lost Mine Barbecue, and Raymond Atkins is the owner of that. He should be having that ready to go shortly. Finally, the Reclaim Building. I think that it was such a noble idea, something like Construction Junction, where you demolish, before buildings are demolished here in our county, we took them, we tried to remove as much of the materials as possible, and to reclaim those so that they didn't go back into the landfills and all. I'll tell you, it's hard to keep that place going, and many of you will see that we have the building up for sale or lease right now. We unfortunately need some more support in order to keep the building going. So finally, attorneys are needed, that's for sure, and so Dawn Legal was established in order for us to also have the support needed for our consumers, which are those people with disabilities, as well as others, to help them as they navigate through the legal systems and to own homes and whatever else is necessary. So Dawn actually created that component too. Finally, why do we do all of it? I want to say, and I really hope that everyone believes that community is at the heart of what Dawn does. We try very hard to be good stewards in the community. And so with that, it concludes. And Brian?
Let's thank our panel. We thank you all for your investment in renovation of real estate in downtown Newcastle. Thank you very much for participating.
You have to stop down there.
We have one more panel to present. Ask Alan Miller, Chris Frye, and Ben Bush to come on up. As they're coming up, Alan Miller is our Deputy Director of Planning for the Lawrence County Planning Office and the Lawrence County Redevelopment Authority. Chris Frye, former Mayor of Newcastle, current City Administrator, and Ben Bush, CEO of Forward Lawrence, our Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Corporation. So let me get Alan's, Alan, you can take the mic, and I'll get your PowerPoint slides set up.
Hi, I'm Alan Miller, Deputy Director of Lawrence County Planning Department. The Planning Department basically works with our municipalities to encourage development and regulate development within the county. We work with different community organizations like Forward Lawrence and Dawn Services. We are also the staff of the Redevelopment Authority for Lawrence County. Our main requirement under the MPC is to create and maintain the comprehensive plan for Lawrence County, which is basically something that creates a vision for what we want the county to look like. It's a growth management plan and how we're going to accomplish that, basically future land use for the county. Our last plan was adopted in 2016 and identified basically 4 different areas where we were focusing. The core communities are the city of Newcastle and the boroughs within the county, and trying to redevelop them. Connecting communities is creating connections between those communities through mostly transportation corridors and through trails and stuff like that. Healthy communities are promoting the health and welfare of the citizens within the community. Complete communities are about creating a complete community that promotes development within that area. From the last comprehensive plan, these are some of the other documents that we created. Experience Lawrence County focuses on the greenways within the county. I'll go into that a little bit more, but the greenways are one of the easiest ways for us as a county to affect the municipalities. I'll explain a little bit more about that. The multimodal study focused on mostly northern Lawrence County, but it did have some extensions into Newcastle along 168. Our primary focus was on creating safe ways for the Amish to use our roadways, and the other focus was on Mitchell Road in Neshannock Township because of the connections between the Y zone, Pearson Park, and the high school and elementary school, creating safe ways for pedestrians and bicyclists to move in between those different facilities. The Affordable Housing and Implementation Plan, pretty self-explanatory. The Strategic Corridor Study focused on 422 and 65 within the city, and then 422 was extending towards the Butler County line, and we were looking at different intersections and trying to improve those for mostly vehicle traffic and safety. And then Link Up Lawrence County is a broadband expansion study. Because of some of the limitations there, it wasn't really focused on the city of Newcastle, because generally the city of Newcastle is pretty good broadband, so our expansion areas were identified in Washington and Plain Grove Township. Like I said before, the County Parks and Recreation goes back to the Greenways plan, so these are some of the 2 county parks, well, there's 3 county parks, but these are the bigger ones. There's West Park Nature Center, which is in Union Township, Quaker Falls, which we just completed phase 2 to Quaker Falls in Mahoning Township. Phase 2 included some overlooks, pavilion, but the main centerpiece there is the stairway down to a lower platform, so you get a great view of the waterfall. Stavich Bike Trail and Neshannock Trail, which are both paved trails within the county. Stavich Trail, we maintain a 7-mile portion of that trail within the county in Mahoning and Union Township. And Neshannock Trail extends from Croton to Dilworth. It's about 1 mile long. We'd love to extend it further. Hopefully someday all the way up to New Wilmington and Valant. But that'll require negotiations with the property owners along there. And one of the greatest opportunities for our department is the river accesses that we've created, 2 of them along the Mahoning River and the Shenango, and 1 on the Beaver. These are great connections for us because it's really easy to get small pieces of property. Most of them have been donated to the county, except for McQuiston and McKinney Russell, which we call Covert. But those were right-of-ways where we repositioned the bridges, so we didn't have to acquire any property there. We just put the launch in the former right-of-way. But the rivers, we don't really have to maintain them, and it's easy to create those connections. And If you go to any one of these launches, especially on the weekends in the summer, you're going to see a ton of people using them for kayaking and canoeing. One of the other requirements under the MPC is the requirement, well, not required to adopt a subdivision and land development ordinance, but the county has adopted one and we maintain them. It allows initially the county to regulate development, but once a municipality adopts its own ordinance, then the municipality is responsible for approval of development. I'm the map guy at the county too, so I snuck a map in here. Basically, if you live in a municipality that's orange or blue, your municipality is responsible for the approval of the development, which is mostly the developed portions of the county. We are the approval authority for anywhere that is gray and green. And our county planning department is the staff of the redevelopment authority. So one of the major things that the redevelopment authority does with whenever a property goes into repository, which is when you haven't paid your taxes for 2 years, it goes free and clear sale. If it doesn't get sold there, it goes into repository. But once it goes into repository, RELC puts a hold on the property so that it can't be transferred until we've taken advantage of whether or not we feel that the RELC feels that we can either sell the property or consolidate properties, to, especially with Dawn Services. Most of the properties for the houses that they built were acquired from repository. So, but we've worked with other community organizations or developers in similar capacity. Next is community development block grants. This program is created by HUD. It focuses on low to moderate income block groups, which most of the city of Newcastle is located within one of those. So it provides money for different types of projects. The city of Newcastle gets their own pot of money, but the county also contributes money to projects within the city, but we're also responsible for every other municipality within the county and their community development block grant, and we administer the money for the rest of those, which we mostly focus on housing rehabilitation, and we also do a lot of paving of roads, helping municipalities with that, depending on if we can prove that there's low to moderate income families in that area. And I was really happy that Tim Fulkerson mentioned the floodplains, because we work with our public safety department for the county's hazard mitigation plan, which is required by FEMA to be updated every 5 years. But if municipalities participate in that plan, they are also required to update it every 5 years, but they can adopt our plan for free. So the county's plan costs between $50,000 to $100,000 every year to create. It's going to cost the same thing for your township, city, wherever you live, to create the same plan, but you can adopt ours for free. All you got to do is show up for meetings and participate. One of the things that you can do to participate is offer up projects to include in the plan, which to create, like creating the retention areas that Tim had talked about. That's a project that could be included in this. And not only can you include it in that, then you can then seek funding from FEMA to actually implement those projects if it's included in a hazard mitigation plan. And being the map guy, the county, we are in charge of the county's geographic information systems, GIS, which basically it's a bunch of geographic data, obviously. But the main things that we use it for in the county right now one planning, but our assessment offices use it to maintain the parcel information and create assessment for it, which generates tax dollars for us, and for public safety. So the county's 911 system, basically all the data that goes into there is generated through our our GIS system. But these are some of our public free things that we offer out there. But if you are part of a community organization or a municipality, you can use our county's Eagle View. It used to be called pictometry, but the nice thing about this is that you can use it to get, it's not 3D images, but you can see all the sides of a building. It uses what's called oblique imagery, so everything's at like a 30 to 45 degree angle. Gives you nice views of every single property. Helps us plan for public safety stuff, and also helps us generate tax dollars through assessment. So, I guess Chris Frye is up next.
Thank you, Alan. Well, it's great to see so many people here. I echo what everybody has kind of said. My role today was just kind of come up here and just speak about, what the city has done in the last few years since I became mayor, or I took my seat in January of 2020, and transitioned through the home rule charter process to the city administrator. So I'm glad to still be here, but I want to take a little step further back to go about 15 years ago, where we were at that time. I think Dawn Services wasn't really involved in, in terms of what they were doing in the Eastside Grove neighborhood. A lot of these communities and organizations were just getting started, and all that kind of came with what we call the Blueprint Communities program, and I don't believe that's been spoken about today. 15 years ago, and Kim Kohler-Jones isn't here, but Kim Kohler-Jones and a host of people, Jenny Jacobs, Kalela, they really took part in really the think tank around what this all is going to look like. 15 years ago. So we know that it wasn't, what do they say, Rome wasn't built in one night. So we know it takes time. But I think the encouraging part of that is that we're on the right path. We're starting to see the fruits of our labor, the investments, the time spent, the collaboration, all be implemented and working out for us now. 15 years ago, also, I started to work with Cray Youth and Family Services when they did this building. I might be a year or so off, but they did this building. But we started out in neighborhood development in the Eastside Grove as well. I remember I grew up in that neighborhood, walking those streets. It was a sight to see. It was probably one of the worst, especially in terms of housing and blighted properties. It was a really bad neighborhood aesthetically. And to see what it is today is very encouraging, and I'm excited because now it's not just in that neighborhood, it's starting to trickle into our downtown, it's trickling into the North Hills, trickling in the South Side, West Side, and throughout the community. So if we can give a round of applause for every group that has, in the last 15 to 20 years, has taken a piece of that blueprint plan and brought it to fruition. And I know many of you who sit here have been a part of that. So in 2020, between 2020 and now, we've made city council and the administration and the mayor's office has made a lot of investment and a lot of major changes, both policy and financially, to help spur this growth. I know that when you're on the campaign trail, you kind of hear everything, but that's many of the things that really stood out to us were the parking in our city. If you've noticed that we now have 2-hour parking and in front of our businesses here, that was to promote opportunities for people to come in and patronize your businesses in the downtown. As we work to fill storefronts and as we work to look at our zoning in the city of Newcastle and downtown, we're hoping that parking really stands out and helps businesses attract people to those businesses. Another big part that we heard a lot was, the business privilege and mercantile tax. How much does it cost to have a business in town in Newcastle? With a little bit of research and a lot of time spent, in my first 3 years of mayor, we found out that the business privilege and mercantile tax on the state level was abolished back in 1988. So we figured, it was about time for us to do the same on our end, and thankfully through the sale of assets, some of the ARPA money, and other ways, we were able to cut that from our budget. So to have a business in the city of Newcastle, you don't have to pay that tax. That's a monumental achievement for us. When we get calls, or when folks were, again, when we were on our campaign trails, and we look at ways to try to incentivize these businesses. And that was one way that we believed that we could, by looking a lot closely at our budget and making it a budget and that supports what people want to see, be a community budget, community-focused budget. Other investments that we've been able to accomplish, and I'm going to throw out some numbers here, they're approximates, but other investments that we've seen over the last 3 to 4 years have been in our roads. When you're driving through the city of Newcastle and the neighborhoods, our roads, a lot of our roads and our infrastructure is crumbling, but in the last four years, over $4 million we've invested in these roads. We've looked at it from a very strategic standpoint on where folks travel the most, areas that we're going to be earmarked for. Obviously, the bridge is closed, but if people are going to be traveling those areas a lot more, we want to make sure that their travels weren't bumpy, they were smooth. So we made investments in those areas. You'll see if you stick around for the tour, you'll see that the bike lane. This was back in 2015. The city received a grant from PennDOT and DCNR to put in bike ramps and to do design work throughout the community. The bike lane goes from the Neshannock Trail that Alan mentioned through the downtown. You'll see where the pocket park is. You'll see the bike lanes on the roads. Unfortunately, the road doesn't look right, but we're going to continue to, once we find funding and some grants that we've already submitted, to update that. You'll see how that bike path and everything kind of molds together, but it continues. I think it extends it out maybe a half a mile or something like that, or that's included in it. But that was a $2 million project that was on the table still after, say, 7 years. A buddy of mine here who worked in my administration, Sean Anderson, and myself worked really hard to get that funding and implement those dollars. So now as you walk across by the river, or you ride your bike, or I get phone calls of fishers, people fishing, and people walking in those areas, and people who really love to take that, to go on that trail, they're seeing and they're recognizing the investment that was put in there. Green spaces. Some of the funders for these green spaces, and you'll see again the pocket park, which I adore. Hopefully everybody else adores, especially when it's going to be completed. The facade on the side of the building was a public-private partnership with the Vitale family, also with the Pennsylvania American Water, and then some of the city's funding through the LSA grant. It's really leveraging all those funding sources, both public and private, that we can design and create that community that we want. I know a lot of you have your organizations and your businesses understand that concept, but it's true. That's how we do it. Not one just individual or one pot of money. We're not looking for just that. It would be nice to have Little Caesars, billionaires, who's changing Detroit, invest in our community. But until that day comes, it takes all of us. Demolitions throughout downtown, as Brian spoke about. One other thing that really maybe got touched on at a small bit was the ARPA funding that the county provided to the city for the work that you'll see this afternoon. Over $1 million came from the county to help us leverage downtown business or downtown development. Those dollars are what Brian, myself, and the city council are looking at very strategically to see what the next phases of these projects are. When you think about parking, you look at the parking garage. You know, the perception is there that the downtown is not safe. The statistics from the police department don't support that perception. However, the way that it looks, the way that it feels, does matter. So we're looking at utilizing those dollars to make investments and to lighten that place up, making, you know, whether it's art, whether it's green space, whether it's design of the building, of the walkways. Those pictures that Mr. Arrowood showed you earlier, those are the plans that we're looking at putting into place. I was also tasked with looking at some of the zoning. You know, just wanted to talk real briefly about zoning. With the STMP grant that Brian had mentioned earlier, this is, again, 15 years ago it started. As we continue to go, and this is a common, when I go to other communities, Youngstown for instance, it took about 20 years for Youngstown to get to where it's at. If you went there 20 years ago, Youngstown was, again, a scary place to walk and go, eat and shop. But they made some major changes. So I think we're right on path with a lot of what we're doing. But our downtown, our zoning, we recognize that it needs change. I'll tell you this, council has been working on this, looking at our zoning for the last 4 years. We're moving ahead very well with Terry Rogers and David Ward as committee chairs to our zoning. They're putting a lot of effort into to that. And now we have the funding to go out and really do a lot of outreach in the community. So we'll be calling on a lot of groups that are in here right now, both local and abroad, to not just your organizations, but your networks in terms of your communities. I know there's community watch groups that can contribute to this. There's businesses that can contribute to this. There's county organizations that can contribute to what we want our downtown to look like. And this comprehensive plan is so important to getting to telling that story, number one, and then also obtaining funding as we look at state and federal dollars to do. If anybody's sitting here thinking like, oh, not another plan, well, it's not just another plan, it's one plan. I'll finally be able to throw that stack of plans that I have on my desk to the side so we can follow that one plan that's really going to bring the change that we want to see. Sorry, zoning, I went off a little bit, but zoning, our downtown business district is C2 zoned. That it has a variety of both permitted and conditional uses. We know conditional uses can be a headache at times, but those are the things that we want to look at. You know, we want to look at what is allowed in our downtown and what we can do. The last panel had mentioned apartment housing. That is a conditional use currently in our under our C2 zoning district. We're looking at bars and taverns are also conditional use. We're looking at ways to make it more efficient and speed the market for businesses, especially in areas that we know that are driving forces to help bring communities back, bringing downtowns back, bringing foot traffic back. We don't want to delay the process, trust me. We talk about it all the time. It's a headache to us just as much of it is as a headache to the business, but what we have here is our CDC, who's over this group. When we came in, that was another focus of mine too, is to find a group of people within the CDC who are all development mindsets. This board is outstanding. It's outstanding. And you know, Tom Sabol is a developer. Kim Craigle, she's on the board of realtors. We have a multitude of people, architects, design, lawyers, foundations. Those folks will be leading the charge in making sure that these zoning and the plans that the city puts in place are going to work for whoever wants to come and do something in the city of Newcastle. And they are becoming that one-stop shop under Brian as our executive director, who we work great on as a team together. Capacity is still low. We're looking, for opportunities to increase capacity through committees, through volunteerism, but we're on the right path. That's the message I want to leave to you all today. We're on the right path. Again, I could have tired out. I got a family of 3 kids and my wife. I went off to college for 6 years, Erie and Pittsburgh, You know, Pittsburgh's booming right now. Erie's making some major changes. And I moved back to the community, worked for Cray Youth and Family Services, Lawrence County Community Action Partnership before becoming a mayor. And this is a great community to live in. You know, again, I raised my family here. I walk the streets. I take my dog out at night. Have no fear of anything happening to me or my family in our community. And again, these things started a long time ago. So let that keep you excited about the process, what the next 5 and 10 years are going to look like. Mark's not here anymore, but I thought he was going to be taking bets on his prediction earlier, which, 18 months, there is definitely going to look better. We have major grants that have been submitted, a $15 million federal grant, that we're hoping for. We have to help with the downtown infrastructure and the roads improvements, all other multimodal grants that we're looking at, again, for streetscape and making areas that have already had great investments in, make them more pedestrian friendly. So those are all the things that we're looking at, and hopefully in this next phase of our planning and our development, we'll be able to put those pictures together and create that story and be able to share with you all as you participate in it. So thank you all for coming today.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ben Bush, and I'm the Executive Director of Forward Lawrence. I'm the guy standing between you all and lunch, so I promise I will make this quick. I called Brian, and he said, you have 7 minutes. I said, well, I better cut 40 slides out of this thing. Again, my name is Ben Bush, and I'm the Executive Director of Forward Lawrence. I'm the new guy in town. I've been here about 15 months. But came to Lawrence County. We're jumping in feet first. My family loves it here, and we look forward to making this our home. Wrong direction. So, Forward Lawrence, our mission is to be the driving force behind economic growth and development, as well as the voice of business and industry in Lawrence County, while promoting leadership, excellence in leadership, and development activities. So, about 5 or 6 years ago, I'm looking at Paul because he was around for that time, the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Corporation merged. And since then, we have created a wider vision and wider inclusiveness in the community. So what are our organizational goals? We have 3 goals. We want to advance the local and regional economy and ensure our membership has the greatest chance for business success, as well as develop, attract, and retain qualified workforce. People make a community, and we have to start treating each and every one of those people as we would normally treat businesses. We have to go and retain these people and attract people to Lawrence County. So I'm going to say something now, and probably my staff are going to laugh at me because I say we have 5 pillars of organizational activity, and this is how we execute on what we do. If it doesn't fall in here, we don't do it. Ashley's smiling right now because they laugh at me all the time for the pillars. All right, so what are these pillars? Connect, market, advocate, educate, and enhance. We connect through connecting the businesses to the resources that they need to succeed. And Ashley LePierre, can you raise your hand? So Ashley is our front line. She's our membership engagement specialist. As a business, you have a problem, you call Ashley, and we will work through it to try to help you find the resources, whether it's workforce, whether it's talent, whether it's a supply chain issue. Get on the phone, call Ashley, and we'll make it happen. And if we can't, we'll find you somebody who can. Market. Not only do we help our small business market, right? A lot of our small businesses understand what they do, right? I'm a great mechanic, I'm a great plumber, I'm a great salesman, but don't necessarily understand the intricacies of operating a business. So we help them market their business for growth throughout Lawrence County, the region, and beyond. But not only that, we help market, on the economic development side, market the assets that this community has. We live in a fantastic county, and it's important that we let other people know how great this community is. Advocate. So advocacy is a huge thing. We have elected leaders that are, many of them here in the room today, they're elected to represent us. But they're not mind readers. They can only do what they know. right? So we have to take them the problems, the issues, and the concerns that we're looking for, right? We have a project in the community that we want to see through to success. And we know that, hey, we've garnered maybe half the money that we need for that project. But we've got to go and we've got to sit down and we've got to explain to them the importance of this project and why it's a community priority to bring those funds in here. Or we have to go and say, hey, part of some of the advocacy we've done in the past few years on the chamber level has been the reduction of the CNI, right? Businesses can't operate if they're sending all their money to Harrisburg. So the reduction of the CNI, the reduction of, or the increase of the net operating loss, ability for businesses to be able to carry those losses forward. Educate. So we do a lot of education stuff, right? Business, like I mentioned earlier, businesses do what they do well, but we try to educate those businesses on the things that they may need some assistance with, whether that's marketing, financing, insurance. We did one this year on the clean energy manufacturing and how you can go after resources that the federal government has put out to help you make your business cleaner, save you energy, save you money. And the last one is enhance. So this is our traditional and non-traditional economic development practices. So these include everything from site selection, attraction, helping you find the right site, real estate development, revolving loan funds, and non-traditional economic development. A lot of you here today talked about housing. Housing is so critically important in our community right now. We need to work towards making sure that there is housing available, good quality housing available, and it's at an affordable price for the workforce that we have. So these are some of our assistance program we have, and you know, the resources that we have to assist the community. We do public business financing. We have 4, soon to be hopefully 6, revolving loan fund programs. And this is everything from helping an industrial business access Commonwealth dollars. Right now we're helping one developer access about 2.1, hopefully, if it goes through, $2.1 million to turn a blighted facility into an industrial multi-tenant facility here in the county. We've helped other industrial businesses access capital to be able to fix equipment that are imperative to their continued operations, or otherwise, you know, they might be out at a 7 or 8% interest rate. They might not be able to to make that investment. So those investments help retain those employees and those businesses here in our community. We've got grant writing and management services. So I don't know, many of you know Diane Richardson in our office. She is wonderful. She's probably one of the top 2 individuals that I've ever met in economic development as far as grant writing administration services go. And she's a rock star. So many of you have worked with her in the past, and we've collaborated on several projects with Dawn and the city, and she's been just fantastic at executing and administering. Compliance is so important when it comes to administering grants because nobody wants to have to send money back. Real estate development and database management. So one of the things we're going to be doing here in a few weeks, thanks to Justin, he helped us get some funding for a real estate development breakfast. We are focusing in on about 14 to 18 properties throughout Lawrence County in different asset classes. We're going to bring folks in from Pittsburgh and the region who are developers, who are folks in construction, who are folks in brokerages that work with regional investors to let them know why we need to invest here in Lawrence County. Brownfield redevelopment. Part of what I discussed earlier was collaboration. We recently collaborated with the city, Chris, Terry, the other council members in the room, to go after a brownfield reassessment grant. We have a rich history of industry in this community, and unfortunately that leads to brownfields. But there are a ton of dollars out there to help assess and clean up these brownfields. And we're able to bring in $500,000 to assess some of the properties in Lawrence County here. So we look forward to moving forward and getting that done. Business retention and expansion. Paul, can you raise your hand? So Paul is our Engage program manager. He does a lot of our business retention visits to find out what businesses' problems are at their front door, whether it's workforce, supply chain. They want to grow, but they don't know how. Paul gets into these businesses and brings the information back, and we connect them to the resources that they need. Mentioned environmental assessment earlier with the Brownfields grant, but we also get involved in some workforce stuff. So Paul's secondary piece of what he does is with the Lawrence County Learning Center. He is a workforce specialist for them, and we kind of work together to collaborate to bring a pre-apprenticeship program to the community. This allows high school age students to get into the workforce, exposure to manufacturing. Manufacturing is one of the biggest industries in the county, and a lot of these kids don't understand that they can stay here in Lawrence County, get a good quality job, and grow their families here. So far this year, we've distributed $180,000 in revolving loan fund assistance. We are currently working on $2.1 million in the PETA program for a local business, another $400,000 from PETA for a manufacturer downtown, and then we have about $330,000 that we hope to get out before the end of the year that will go to 2 businesses that are outside of the city center, but will also help support the city's growth. We've answered 27 requests for proposals. These are requests that come in from the state or the region in regards to businesses looking to, locate in a new area, and we have to come back and look at each one of the sites that we have that might be able to fit in there, and excuse me, get that information off to the businesses so they can make the decision whether Lawrence County is the right place for them. Through what's called the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program. I call it RCAP, there's many people that call it RACP, but it's a big argument in the industry. We are currently administering $6.5 million worth of state RACP dollars for Lawrence County, and those projects have $55.5 million of private investment in them. So everything from a project that we're working on down in Mahoningtown, we purchased the old Elliott Steel Brothers building. As many of you may know, that building sat empty for about 3 years and was probably underutilized for another 8 or so, 10 years before that. We are currently in the process of revitalizing that building, and we will have some really good news soon. I can't put anything out publicly at this point in time, but we are working to bring a business into Mahoningtown to put hopefully about 40 or so Lawrence County and Newcastle residents to work. Other outside of RACP assistance that we've pulled in, about $2.6 million in current grant projects that are other than that. Many of you know the Stonecrest facility that we've been kind of blasting out all over the place down in Wampum. Developer by the name of John LaCarte came in and turned the Stonecrest business, the Stonecrest Golf Course into the Stonecrest Business Park. It is amazing to drive by that facility and see the change that has occurred there. But we received $1 million to assist him with the transportation improvements that are going to have to be invested in to make that park viable to be built out. And then all in all, so far this year, we've been able to calculate that through the work that the organization has done, we have either helped retain or grow or create 130 jobs in the county. And then each one of these pictures here kind of correlates with my 5 pillars. Ashley's going to give me a smirk now. And so every one of these pictures is something that we've done in the connect, market, advocate, educate, and enhance realm. These areas are where we will continue to move forward and work and collaborate with our partners, many of you here in the room today. And that is the end of my presentation, but I would like to take a second and say, collaboration is the key to success. As we all work together to move our community forward, that's the only way it's going to happen. And each and every one of you in here in this room understands that. But we need to get out in the community and show everybody what this group of individuals is doing. And I'd also like to take a second to just, if we could all thank Brian for putting this on together. Now I promise.
Just about done. First, I want to thank again. Let's give another round for our panelists, everybody that participated. And one final round of thanks for our Lawrence County Board of Realtors. Thank you for the financial support and for attending today. As you know, like many downtowns, we have our challenges, but I think the takeaway I want you to take from today is that there's many positive things happening and there's more potential for downtown. I actually have a slide of the list of properties that are currently for sale or leased in downtown, but having trouble getting it to project on the screen. For those of you that are able to join me, as you know, the former bank building down on East Washington Street has been converted into a restaurant. But right across the street from us, unfortunately, it's a national trend. These bigger banks, they're moving to more online and mobile banking options. We had a major bank close their downtown branch. That property is available. Is Phil LeMay here? Phil LeMay is a commercial realtor with Keller Williams, but he currently has that property. It faces at the corner of East Washington Street, but it's actually to North Mill Street. That property is currently available. I've worked with Phil. We've shown it to 2 groups so far. We might have some potential interest, but that property is the anchor of the Washington Center development. Tom Wilson, are you still here? Tom was here earlier today. He owns the middle part. Washington Center is actually 3 properties. You have the PNC Bank space in the front. Tom Wilson owns the retail space in the middle, and then the back corner is the First National Bank location. So it's actually 3 properties in one. Those of you from Newcastle remember years ago the former Joseph's supermarket. That building is now, after the market closed for about 10 years, the U.S. Postal Service leased that space, and that property is at 20 East South Street. That property is also available for sale right now. We've had a couple people look at that, but that property could easily be reconverted into new uses.
Do you know what they're asking?
That property, most recently, the former Joseph Supermarket, I believe the initial asking price was around $500,000. It might be $450,000 at this point. But that's about 25,000 square feet. I don't know if I'll be able to show it. I also have a video. Sam Blundo is a realtor, and she's now representing City Church. They bought the Riverplex. Those are from Newcastle, the old Sneisner and Centennial building right at the corner here of South Mill Street and East Washington Street. City Church now owns that and uses part of the building, but there's a lot of square footage available space for lease in that building as well. Let me see if I can pull up that video. And then, unfortunately, everybody knows Rite Aid has been closing stores. They filed bankruptcy a few years ago. They've been closing stores around the country. We have a vacant Rite Aid building. It's not for sale or lease yet. I've been trying to get a hold of the owners, but that's down on Kennedy Square. But that's a nice 10, 11,000 square foot building, modern construction with parking. And then we did lose, the Silvio's restaurant closed recently, and that building is available as well. So there's a lot of the former Fountain Restaurant building down on East Washington Street. That property is for sale right now. And so my point is there's a lot of opportunity. We saw the 3 panelists earlier bought buildings and repurposed them, and they're generating rental income. And we want to spread the word that, hey, there are people that it can be done successfully to reinvest in real estate in downtown Newcastle.